lead us in the pledge tonight, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's no prayer tonight, but I do want you to keep in mind, I'd like to dedicate this evening's council meeting to, we lost a councilman this week, Kenny King Sr., served the city very, very well, so let's just dedicate tonight's meeting in memory and honor of Kenny King Sr. Okay, roll call, please, Kathy.
Powell.
Here.
Hayes.
Here.
Barstow.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Picken.
Here.
Walter.
Here.
Carter.
Here.
Okay, everybody's here. We have a quorum present. First thing on the agenda tonight is citizens' comments, and we have two special guests tonight. One being the Boy Scouts to discuss a Eagle project, and the other is Mr. Crawford Lipsey with the Dignity Revolution Challenge. Crawford, would you come up to the podium, please? I've already handed out these booklets for you.
Thank you very much. So, thank you, Mayor.
If
My
you
name-
just go ahead and give me your name and address, just so we have that for the record.
Crawford Lipsey, Lipsey, and it's 14890 Shoreline Drive, West, Thornville, Ohio. I am a Licking County person, though. I just moved back and plan to retire here in Licking County. I'm also on the vice chairman of the board for your Licking County YMCA. So I had a lot of time with the YMCA, and I spent a lot of time with doing work for Licking County. So I'm one of you. I enjoy Pataskala. Just finished eating down here at the Nutcracker. It was awesome. I'm here tonight to talk a little bit, and thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to do this. Talk a little bit about a bullying prevention program that I'm part of in my retirement. And I was bullied. As you can see, I'm not very tall. I've unfortunately got a lot rounder, but when I was in high school, middle school, I was small, and I spent a good deal of time being bullied. And I stood up for myself, but people were a lot bigger than I am. I forgot about it for a long time, and fortunately, it didn't have significant lasting effects on me. But that's not the case with many kids. You can't hardly pick up the paper anymore or look in the national news without seeing some child that has been significantly affected by bullying, either going as far as suicide, or we talk about and think about the drug problem that we have in the county and other places. The root cause of a lot of the aversive behavior that we have in kids today, it unfortunately comes from bullying. A lot of it comes from bullying. And about 50% of parents don't know that their children are bullied. 90% of kids in middle school and high school have been affected in some way by bullying. Either they have been bullied, they are a bully, or they know people who are being bullied and they don't know what to do about it. Okay, 90%. An effective bullying prevention program stops bullying 57% of the time, which is why the federal government has mandated in all but 3 states that the high schools and middle schools should have some sort of bullying prevention program in place. Now, I worked in the corporate world for 30 years. I was all over the world running companies, and when I retired, like I said, I wanted to move back to Licking County. But I didn't want to stop doing things, didn't want to stop working. Bob Lenz, who is the founder of the Dignity Revolution, he speaks to 500,000 kids a year all over the world. He's in Alaska now at 18 schools speaking in Alaska. Alaska has some of the highest drug use in schools in the country. Also has the highest suicide rate for middle school and high school in the country. It's cold and dark up there a lot. And they're isolated. So they also have the highest sexual abuse rate in the country as it relates to young women. Did you know that every 9 seconds a young woman is abused? And I'm talking about sexually abused. I'm not just talking about bullied. Okay, so this is a huge problem that 50% of the parents around our country don't know that's really going on, and it is coming to light. I'm not saying that people aren't doing anything about it right now, but and coming back to Ohio, I want to see my county, having a quality program in place at the schools. And so you all have the Licking Heights and Watkins here. I would be honored to have the opportunity to talk to your superintendents and principals about this program and talk about what they're doing. I went online before I came tonight and looked at both of those school districts, and Licking Heights has a website. You can go on and say, I'm being bullied, what do I do? And it comes up, and it's, B. Turner at lhschools.org. It's an email address that you can email. When I went to Watkins, I didn't find anything. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying it wasn't. If there is something, it didn't readily come up as to what if I'm a student and I'm being bullied, what do I do? And the nice thing about what I want to propose and what you have in front of you, this is the difference between this program and other programs, and I'm well aware of them now because I've spent time learning about it, is that most programs are some posters on the wall, in a cafeteria, in a bathroom, and it's mostly a bullying kind of turn-in program. It's a law enforcement, okay? Here's the hotline, you call, and in fact, I don't know if you all know, but a lot of times you can't even talk. The person that they call on the other end really can't even talk to the student unless they have the parent's permission to do so. And if the kid's being bullied, he may not want to tell the parents, he or she, and it becomes a real mess. So part of our program, we have what we call safe zones that we develop. But this is a cultural program that focuses on cultural change in the school, teaching kids that every person has value, and what does that mean, and how do you locate it, how do you find it, how do you bring it out in kids, not just let's turn them in and kick them out of school, okay? Some kids that has to happen to, but the first step ought to be addressing kids and trying to teach them a better way or a different way about thinking about themselves and a different way about thinking about other people. We're in over 200 schools now. It is a certified program. It is extremely good. Like I said, I've known Bob, well, I didn't say this, I've known Bob for 30 years. And so when I retired and I knew what he was doing with kids, which is incredible, he and I got together and I said, this is what I want to do in my retirement. When I have time to spend on my own, I want to spend it working for kids. And I want to spend it in your program. And let's take your program, which started in Wisconsin. We had 100 schools and everybody who knew Bob. Bob comes in and does an assembly and so forth. And everybody who hears him, that's where he gets his next program from. But I want to take this thing national. I think it's got the power to be national. And we've done schools now in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Minnesota, in Texas, in Florida, South Dakota, Louisiana. I mean, we've done programs now in about 15, 16 states, okay, and we're doing schools. It's 3 steps, and then I'll be done. There is an assembly that we bring Bob in, and he'll do for the middle school and the high school at the same day. And he's a wonderful speaker. He gets people engaged. The kids are engaged. He uses comedy. He uses real stories. Then we've developed with Deb Tackman. Her bio is in your folder. Deborah, Bob, and I. Deborah Tackman is the 2012 National Health Teacher of the Year. She was inducted in 2012 to the National Teachers Hall of Fame. She is the chairperson, was a chairperson for the National Bullying Prevention Program. She is a very accredited national teacher who has helped us write this Dignity Challenge, which is then sent into the schools where the teachers work with the students. Like I said, it's cultural. Rather than just come in, do an assembly for a couple hours and run out and post some stuff on the wall, we spend time with the teacher, and this is an ongoing program that is done in the classroom at certain times during the year to keep people reminded and keep the bullying prevention part of this thing in front of people's eyes on a regular basis. And this, I mean, if you look through this, I just brought one copy, but this is comprehensive. This is great stuff. So it's a great program. I want to see it personally. I mean, I've even offered to pay for it. It costs about $4,000 for 2 schools, so about $2,000 a school to do this program, which is not a lot of money, but schools don't have a lot of money either. I mean, I've offered to pay personally to have it come into the schools here in Ohio. And I'm sure if we could get something done here in Pataskala, that I can find people like the YMCA, the Rotary clubs, people that I know. If the school can't fund it, I'll figure out a way to fund it. But I would like the opportunity, if y'all would give it to me, to maybe go with the mayor and speak to the superintendents or the principals, and at least let them look at it, and they can decide whether they want to do anything with it or not. But that was my purpose for being here tonight, and I appreciate your time, and Mike, thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate you coming. We're working on a drug-free Clubs of America program for both of our schools. I thought this fell right into line with what we need to do with our school children, and I wanted to present it to council tonight. And I will be reaching out to you to get you hooked up with both of our superintendents, and we'll take it to the next step. Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Lipsy tonight? Yeah, Mrs. Carter actually works at Licking Heights, so she would be
Okay, great.
she'd be a great source. So thank you very much. And don't feel like you have to stay. You guys can take off. It's going to be a long night, so thank you very much. Next up, our Eagle Scout. And is his scout leader here too? This is the young gentleman that I told you about that was going to tackle the cemeteries and try to bring them into shape. We've discussed this. I brought him tonight so that he could get council's blessings before we send him to the next chapter, which would be going to a Buildings and Grounds meeting and get that going in front of that committee. So, name and address, please, sir.
My name is Jared Hampshire, and I live at 13318 Havens Corners Road.
And your scout leader?
My name is Darren Coe. I live at 9543 Loop Road in Kirkersville.
Okay, could you tell us a little bit about your project, please?
I'm here today to talk about the two cemeteries in Pataskala, Ohio, Swisher Cemetery and McIntosh Cemetery. Swisher Cemetery, I'll start with that one because that one is right down the road from me. The cemetery is not too far back from the road, but there's a nice gravel path going up to it, and the cemetery itself is in kind of disarray. There's a lot of tombstones falling over. There's weeds and a lot of bushes that are overgrowing, tipping them over. Now, as far as it goes, I can't do anything with the tombstones because they're considered private property, but my goal is to go in there and remove some of the dead bushes and the overgrowing bushes and replace them with rose bushes and maybe add a park bench. And with the front fence, take that out and replace maybe a nice white picket fence to spruce it up from the road. Now with McIntosh Cemetery, it's a smaller cemetery closer to the road. That one is in far worse condition than Swisher Cemetery. Now I know the picture doesn't show it, but the fence itself is falling apart. There is a portion of it that is just being held together by 3 bungee cords, and the gate itself is rusted and being held closed by a bungee cord. And there is a moss problem that more than likely needs to be taken care of so it doesn't keep growing. My plan for McIntosh Cemetery would be as well to put in another bench and plant some rose bushes and remove the dead bushes as well. And I would also like to replace the fence, either take it out and build a new one, or just in general, just fix it up.
Okay, well, very good. I know this has been a hot topic. We've been looking forward to somebody to step up and take this project. So who's our Buildings and Grounds chairperson, please?
Ma'am.
Mrs. Hayes, would you get contact information from this gentleman and let him know when the next meeting is so that we can get him back in here and get something going, okay?
March 20th.
Yeah, we're aiming for March
March
20th,
20th.
and we can confirm that with you probably tomorrow. So if you can leave contact information, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay. Any other citizens' comments? Anybody wish to speak tonight? Yes, sir. I could have your name and address, please, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, good evening. My name's Tom Dragolich. I live at 1831 Azalea Lane. Good evening. I represent the board of directors from the Sugar Mill Development. As you all well know, I've spoken with many of you, Mr. Coey, regarding the water pressure issues throughout our development. All 62 residents are affected by an extreme low water pressure based upon the EPA regulations, and I know there's a lot of back and forth for what is a standard, but given what I've seen as far as EPA regulations, the recommended guidelines is about 60 to 80 PSI throughout, for a range for acceptability, and we sit around 42 to 52 at the households. Everybody in the development is affected, and so it's one of those issues that we don't know of any plans to remedy this water issue that we have. And I've talked with Mr. Coey about this, and he's been very supportive, and I'm not trying to say he hasn't been, but we would just like to see that the city tried to develop something to help our community increase the water pressure.
Okay. And this isn't kind of a question-answer type thing, but I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. I know that it's been a topic that we have been discussing. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak tonight? Okay, moving on. Introduction, discussion, and approval of consent agenda matters.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Higgins, seconded by Mr. Barstow. Discussion and roll.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Ficken,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda passes. On to unfinished business, ordinance 2017-4277 for a third reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hicken.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hayes. Kathy, when you're ready, third reading.
Ordinance 2017-4277, this is the third reading, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $5,500,000 of bonds for the purpose of paying part of the costs of constructing a new police facility and matters related to such bonds.
Discussion? Mr. Walther.
Question for BJ. BJ, I know in your report you have a couple different items in here, and we have spoken about this a little bit, but two items. First one, the money that was moved over last year, the $400,000 from the capital fund. What is your? I know it's not in your summation for the budget itself for these bonds and for the police station. How do you envision using that money that's been moved over?
What I would anticipate, that is moved, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, but that's been moved over to the capital facilities fund where the lease revenue goes into from this building. The way I envision using that, there's been discussion about using that to pay the architect's fee and not rolling that into the debt. I would like to leave that in the fund as that fund builds up, so we have it to assist with making payments and not doing that one lump sum payment to the architects.
Okay, but it would be something you would anticipate using directly for
No
the
doubt
police
about
station.
it. No doubt. Yeah, it's in that capital facilities fund that has been identified for paying for this. If there was any other use of it, it would have to come back to council because we'd have to move it out of there to use it for something else.
Okay. Second question. Sure. In your report, you had talked about a $315,000 budget item per year for the next 5 years. I'm trying to correlate the numbers that Jamie put together with the payments for, depending on what year and type of bond refund or bond repayment plan we have. And I'm trying to figure out exactly which one you're suggesting with a $3,000 or $315,000 yearly payment.
Right.
It seems like that would fit under the 25-year with a 10-year call, but I'm hopeful that we can talk about that a little bit.
I can certainly talk about that, and I'll pass it over to you after I say some stuff about it. What we're recommending, and we have through this, is the 15-year private placement going short term. We're getting a good interest rate on that, no call on it, and we're looking at about, on average, $395,000 a year, we'll call it. The $315 was put into the budget before we had these amortization schedules, and it was based on a 25-year, because at the time that's what we were talking about. As we started looking at rates and looking at the different options we have, we realized a 15-year is there. Granted, there's $315 in the budget, but looking at the budget projections, income tax collections, and just the next 5 years, and that's all we project, but we've got to assume the trend's going to continue. The $395 is certainly something that the city can support and afford.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Yes.
I guess I have a little bit of a follow-up. and it's kind of in line with that. And I want to thank especially Mr. King and Mr. Nicholson for answering some of the questions that I asked individually to you all this week, or last week rather. Part of my question is, so we're talking about 398. I assume then that a hunk of the Capital Facilities Fund money will be combined with a slice of income tax collections to make that payment. And I know that there are some concerns about. I also want to thank you both for talking about occupancy in this building and at least giving us some more information. There were some legitimate concerns raised last time about, should we be worried about about vacancies, I guess would be the right word. Can we sustain that, and do we anticipate any vacancies like that? It's kind of a take a deep gulp moment, right? When you're at this level, to say, well, if everything went to pot and suddenly we had no tenants, do you think we could absorb that kind of a hit? But I just maybe give me a little bit more overview on how you anticipate slicing those payments.
Currently, the 5-year projections, as BJ indicated, we're based.
Jamie, will you pull that microphone a little closer?
Not on either. So.
Well, that might explain it.
Is that better?
Thank you.
The 5-year projections, like Andy indicated, were based on $315,000 debt service. That was me in August, 6 months ago, going, what are interest rates looking like today? We had no really strong parameters around what this project would be. So we based it on a 25-year amortization schedule. The 15-year amortization schedule looks to save us about $150,000 over the life of the debt over the 25 year, which is why we went that way. Based on the 315, I believe it was about, we were expecting to take about $100,000 a year. Again, initially we did not build in this $400,000 that's in the fund. I was expecting to take about $100,000 to $125,000 a year, which would basically just take the annual amount. The fund has more than enough to cover that. I think we're currently upwards of around $200,000 in the fund. So if we need to increase it to cover that $80,000, I think it's not an issue. The $400,000 can be used to supplement that, so that we don't have to take any additional from what we were projecting for income tax, at least for a while, probably out to 5 years, and then then we'll start looking at the numbers where they go from there. But currently, BJ and I have looked at the numbers, and we're fairly comfortable with those numbers. As far as the occupancy, the tenants being, relatively speaking, public entities, while we do have a couple of private retail businesses here, insurance agents, et cetera, they occupy a much smaller piece of the floor plan. It's primarily occupied by COTC and LAP. And as you know, LAP took over the doctor's office downstairs, invested a significant amount of money in renovating that, so I don't anticipate them looking to move anytime soon. And we've heard nothing from COTC. And in fact, they're investing in improving the facilities and adding more features to their rooms. So we're not hearing anything like, hey, we're not sure we're going to be staying here. If we were hearing that, we would be coming to you and saying, hey, there is some risk to the rent. Is there a guarantee? Absolutely not. I mean, anybody could come by, at the end of the year, we're walking. That's always a risk. But at this point, we don't have, we're not seeing that on our radar as a risk.
And this goes without saying, but the 395 average, that would be the worst case scenario if this thing came in, is when we get bids, and I'm anticipating them come in and fairly competitive, we may see a good price, and it's going to be less than that. That's the 395 is the worst case scenario.
Thank you.
Mrs. Carter?
What is the annual revenue from our rental now?
It is about just over $106,000 a year.
Okay. And I guess, and I want to clarify, because the last time, at our last meeting, we had a lot of discussion about the money and how all the numbers lay out. And certainly my questions weren't saying that I'm not in support of the police station. I have been since the beginning, but I have to also balance that with the well-being of the city as a whole. So those, it's my duty to ask those questions and follow up on those things. Another concern that I have is how we're going to move forward with Old Town Hall and what kind of revenue we're going to get from that for rentals, because I would hope to see that be the purpose so we can continue to bring that money in. In order to do that, we're going to have to make some renovations. And what's that going to cost? So those are still some of my, when I start to get nervous about the money, those are the reasons why. But I do appreciate the amount of information that was shared this week about the money and how it's all going to come in. Probably should have asked a little earlier for those to be lined up as council, for those to be brought so we could see them side by side. So I appreciate that.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have the same concerns on the financial aspect, I think, that Mrs. Carter does. A couple other thoughts. We're going to have Old Town Hall. It would be vacant and available for rent or renovation. We put a ton of money into that, and I can recall Mr. Lenzo outlining the amounts of money that have gone into that building. It's a lot of money. I know a lot of people have a lot of affection for the building, but we're still talking about public dollars and that have to be spent, and the budget pie is only so big and it only gets so bigger each year. It is about 3% each year. The other concern I have about this building is if it is, as the city grows, and we may or may not, the council may or may not decide to hire additional employees, where are they going to go? If they're not going to go, this building is pretty much full. And if we put them down at Town Hall, we've just exchanged one problem for another problem. We've taken the police department out of a building that's not suitable for them, but we're going to put another department into a building that is going to have the same type of problems that the chief has talked about with electricity and technology and heating and air, all the other the things that are the problems in that building. So that's the other concern I have. The other concern I have, and just in terms of looking at some of the numbers, and I was doing some of this over the weekend and then this afternoon, is as the city continues to grow, we're going to have Westport's going to put some new homes in down here on Broad Street. I don't know how many it's going to be, but there's going to be new homes in. As we have more people come into the city, that means, doesn't necessarily mean more crime, but it means more for the police department. It means more speeding tickets, more accidents, things like that. Potentially more crime. The problems that we had at Sugar Mill last week, those are the kinds of things we'll have. And the police department, I think legitimately, will come to us and say we need more officers. I don't know how we can pay. It's $396,000 a year, and then because the budget pie is only so big and it only grows. Over the 15-year life of this loan, the 3% will get us an additional $2 million of income tax revenue. We'll go from about $5.1 million to, $2.5 million, $7.7 million. That's about how much we'll grow. But if the city grows, then we also have to consider pay increases that we have for our employees. And so I think that this is a 15-year commitment. This is not something, this is a 15-year mortgage. This isn't something that we can say, well, we're not going to pave that road this year. This is a payment that we have to make, and if we have to sacrifice other things because we have to make this payment, I think that's something we need to consider. I'll say this: I think that certainly the police department's is in a building that's not suitable for them. I think that's probably without. I don't think you can really argue with that. The problem. Having said that, the problem is, are we going to create another problem by building this building? Because we're talking about money. That's what it comes down to, is how much money are we going to have? And I appreciate Mr. King and Mr. Nicholson with providing me the information so I could go over that. That's my concern. And I think that since we've just gotten the numbers and we're about to take out a 15-year mortgage, I think it's worth a little bit more careful consideration, because again, this isn't something we can we can decide not to pave a road. We can decide not to do something in the utility department. We can defer things. We can do that. But we can't defer this payment. We can't defer this payment. So I think that's something that we really need to consider. Again, the building is fine. It looks like a great building. It's well designed. I think it is appropriate, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that we have to do just because it's appropriate. That would be true for anything. We can have something from the street department. I want this piece of equipment, or I want to do this project, or something like that. We can have requests from our citizens about paving a street. We have to decide if that's the best use for the budget that we have. That's a concern that I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other discussion? All right. I would need a motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2017-4277.
Motion by Mr. Hicken,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Lee. Discussion and roll.
Barstow,
No.
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Ordinance passes. On to ordinance 2017-4278 for a third reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hicken, seconded by Mr. Lee. Kathy, when you're ready, third reading.
Ordinance 2017-4278. This is the third reading, an ordinance to rezone property located at 124 Coors Boulevard, parcel number 064-068-460-00.022, totaling 3.804 plus or minus acres in the city of Pataskla from the Professional Research Office Pro zoning classification to multifamily residential RM zoning classification.
Discussion and roll. Okay, I'm sorry. Motion to adopt.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Walther, seconded by Mr. Lee. Discussion and roll.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Okay, ordinance passes. Ordinance 2017-4279 for a second reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hicken, seconded by Mr. Lee. Kathy, when you're ready, second reading.
Ordinance 2017-4279, this is the second reading, an ordinance to make supplemental appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2017.
Discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Well, I don't know if I will do that. I respectfully request that you dispense with readings of ordinance 2017-4279 on three separate dates as provided for in section 4.04 of the Charter of the City of Pataskla.
We have a motion to dispense with the reading.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Lee. Discussion on the motion to dispense. Kathy, roll, please.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Motion passes. Need a motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No,
No.
we're
Make a motion to adopt ordinance 2017-4279.
Have a motion by Mr. Hicken,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Walther. Discussion and roll.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Ordinance passes. Ordinance 2017-4280 for a second reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hicken,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Hayes. Kathy, when you're ready, second reading.
Ordinance 2017-4280. This is the second reading, an ordinance amending Chapter 1207 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Pataskla and repealing all other ordinances and parts of the ordinances in conflict therewith.
Any discussion? Okay, that was just the second reading. So. Okay, motions. Okay. We're into the interview phase, and I will turn this over to the president.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the second interview phase for the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Personnel Board of Review, and the Records Commission, and the Licking County Transit Board alternate. There were 3 council members who were not present at the last set of interviews. So, and there was also specifically one individual who is up for 2 of these appointments. So I think what we're going to do is I would like to ask Mr. Ashcraft to come forward, and we will go ahead and handle this interview just like we did all the others.
Mr. President, if I may.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask a quick question, and then I was one of the council members that was not here last meeting. But I know that in these applications, we did have an application that came in late, and I wanted to talk just for a moment about, before we got into the interview session, just how we were going to handle deadlines. I know there's been discussions about it over the past several meetings. We've made, I think, some statements that the deadlines count, that we need to make sure that if it doesn't. At the same time, there's also been a discussion that, we want to make sure that we get more people involved, and, somebody that may not have had notice that was late by, a small amount of time, do we want to give those people the ability to interview? So I just wanted to bring it up and maybe have some type of, well, not maybe, but have some type of determination on how we're going to look at deadlines.
Okay. I mean, I'll start. I mean, it's. I agree with that. I think what and you and I have discussed this a little bit, but I think what you're seeing is the byproduct of the city changing and getting larger. I think you are getting some more. First of all, there's a charter change that changes how we do things. I'm a believer that a deadline should matter. In this instance, I will point out to those assembled and just everybody here, there was in this instance a situation where the notification for the position that was applied for did not end up in one of the social medias that we typically advertise. That individual was looking at that specific one and did not realize until essentially the day, correct me if I'm wrong here, Kathy, the day of the actual deadline that the position was indeed open. We were requesting applicants. I think, and I kick this open to council, everybody should I think if that type of an accident happens, we are on the side of, okay, I understand why you missed the deadline. That's an extenuating circumstance. That's something different. As we move forward, my feeling would be, exactly what you said, Mr. Walters, is, number one, does a deadline matter? And number two, what happens if nobody applies, but we get an ideal candidate? In the past, I think a lot of this has been kind of up to us to drum up these positions. I think we're starting to see a change in that. But I would say that barring the circumstances like I just described, if you miss the deadline, we either just go forward with the interviews or repost it. But I would be open to hear what fellow council has to say about that. So I'll kick it open to anybody that if you want to throw in a 2 cents.
I think everyone knows how I feel about the deadlines. I think as a city, we make a statement when we don't adhere to deadlines. So I'm all about the deadlines. So, but I'm agreeing with a lot of the things that you said, Tim. So, I mean, with the social media issue, I don't know the story behind that, but just that I think we are getting better as a city, making sure that we get the information out there to all outlets. But I'm kind of a fan of sticking to a deadline. That's my opinion.
Ms. Carter?
I'm a structure person. I believe in deadlines. I think we need to stick to them. As a city, we also need to be consistent in how we advertise and how much time we give for our advertisements and those sort of things. And as Mr. Higgins said, it's part of our growth and how things are changing around here that we even have to address the issue. So I don't believe that up to this point we've done anything terribly wrong or out of the ordinary based on our situation. But now that we have talked about it and it's in front of us, from here forward, we need to advertise consistently and stick to the deadline.
I would agree with that.
Do we have a spot on our website that says what our social media outlets are? Like, where are some places that you can look? Because it seems like we're getting, and this is not a city thing, we have a new social media outlet every time I turn around. I have a teenager, so I don't even know what he's on. I just
Twitter's and the Spotify.
I know, and I feel like if we had maybe something where I guess if you're on the city website, then you've probably already seen the posting, but I don't even know what we put everything on. So,
Well, and herein lies another problem, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds because I realize we're supposed to be doing interviews, but there's a component to the administration, and there's also a component to our own clerk who posted it well. I don't know, Mr. King, can you address that? Or?
Yeah, I believe the issue was, and I can't remember which one it didn't get on. First answer, yes, we do have on our website what's social media. Okay. You always see the little link, Facebook and Twitter here. Facebook is what we use most. So that is on the website. They are posted on the website and social media typically. This time it didn't get to one or the other when it happened. I don't get a vote in this, but I agree with Mel. I think that, the way to go may be because council has discussed this in the past, and I think make the formal decision that moving forward, deadlines count, regardless of pretty much anything. Deadlines count.
Maybe we need to clarify. I'm not aware of a social media that it didn't make it to. There may be, but I was not aware of that. The notice was posted in the Glass Case. The notice was also posted on the website. There was a place at the bottom of the first page, the home page of the website, that listed the different bodies that we were looking for people to interview for. That is where it didn't appear.
Well, that lack or that whatever that what you just described right there, Kathy, was specifically cited by the person when making their
Totally legit.
So,
Yeah, legit.
It basically is my objective here is to make sure that we have some consensus to how we're handling as we grow and as we get more applicants for each position, which is a good thing, which is what we've always wanted and has been horribly lacking for the last, since I've been here. But at the same time, the people that apply need to know that there isn't somebody putting their application in after the deadline. That's all. That's where I wanted to make sure we, as a body, identify that and come up with a rule. And regardless of circumstances of social media, if it's on, as Kathy said, if it's on the website and it's posted in the Glass Case, that's notice in my book, and that's the deadline is posted at that point. So I'm okay with going forward from this day forward type of thing, and work with the applicants that we have at this point due to that issue. But I want to make sure that we don't talk about this again in 2 or 3 months. That was my point to bring it up.
Mr. King?
And I don't know if that's going to be a motion that we have to make to remedy that, or how we go forward with that. But I would like to make sure we have something that the majority of council agrees with.
I think along with that, if that's the decision, it certainly needs to be placed on all the advertisements that no applications will be received after the
Agree.
posted and advertised deadline.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Thank
I think in the interest of the interviews proceeding forward, we can move forward with investigating that. All right, Mr. Ashcraft, I'm sorry that you, sorry about our little housekeeping thing there. I know that you weren't here last time because of some knee surgery, and if you're having a hard time standing up after, please feel free to sit down and or maybe start off, give us your name and a little bit about yourself.
My name's Bruce Ashcraft. I grew up in the community. I've spent my whole life here. I have a real deep concern about how we plan the city to go forward, because I feel it's very important right now to lay the root system for what you want it to be 50, 100 years from now and what it's going to look like. Are we going to end up like Whitehall? Are we going to end up like Obetz? You're going to be like Dublin? What do you want to do, and how are you going to proceed? That's the reason I threw my name in the hat. So some of you know, some of you don't. I'm retired fire from here in town. So, but I grew up where the library is, across the street, and I now live at 270 Blacks Road. So in my 65 years, I've moved about 3/4 of a mile.
And that's Pataskala 43062.
As far as I know.
We just basically kind of went round robin with the other one, so I'm going to start down here with Mr. Powell and see if he has an interview question for you.
I noticed on your application you have experience with fire codes and
6 years ago, I retired as fire prevention officer here with the fire district. So I've spent about 3 or 4 years in that. I've done fire prevention off and on through my 30-plus years in the fires.
could you speak more to your experience with working with codes and that sort of
Working
thing?
with codes, I did building inspections. That's the hands-on stuff we do. Fire education, mostly going through. As far as doing actual plan reviews and stuff like that, we had another person, who was John Singleton, who did that. As far as I know, he's still doing that until he retires. So as far as actually working with actual plans and the finished product, I never had any hands-on with that, so to speak. Did do a lot of walking through new buildings and stuff, and following up, making sure they're doing what they should do.
Thank you.
Mr. Walther.
Thank you very much for your application. I noticed that you put in for both the planning and the BZA.
Right.
Have you had any experience in front of either one of those boards?
No.
Okay. And your understanding of the two boards, are you pretty familiar with what each are, what tasks they may be tasked with?
I've never spent a lot of time doing it. I've tried to stay out of politics, but I feel very strongly about where the city's heading. So in order to have any kind of influence or to make sure that we do things properly, you have to get involved. So that's where I'm at. And I'm willing to learn. So I'm retired. I don't have any other jobs. So.
Well, the good thing about Planning and Zoning and Board is they're both non-political bodies, so
Yes,
that's an excellent place to be.
true.
What would be your understanding of the comprehensive plan in general? Not necessarily Pataskala's comprehensive plan, but a comprehensive plan in general for a city.
It's what I've seen in the past is where it's got zones laid out of what you expect to do and what you're trying to implement, and where you want to have your commercial stuff, where you want to have your manufacturing and whatnot, residential and so on. So that's about the extent of it. I've never really done a lot of reading on it.
Would you say your opinion may be that best laid plans can change, or these are the plans that we must adhere to when you think of a comprehensive plan?
Plans can always change.
Okay.
But I think there's some things. It's like what you started down here on Main Street. Okay, if you're going to do that in the old parts of the Pataskala, whether it be Summit Station, where not, then you follow through and you do it. You go with that plan, the street lights and that kind of stuff. If you got a subdivision, you decide what kind of lighting you're going to do in that. You just don't go and do helter-skelter whatever a builder wants to do, just anywhere, anytime. And then you don't, to to me, you don't have anything that looks uniform, you know, it doesn't look the same. Looks like you're driving from one community to another. So,
Would you also agree, and as you said, you think best laid plans would change, that, for instance, our comprehensive plan was done 10 years ago, over 10 years ago now. And obviously the community has changed, as you know, being here and being in the fire code department, you know, that's changed. So there are going to be changes that need to be made routinely to that code. And I don't know if you're aware or not, but we are going to be looking at updating the comprehensive plan. And I just wanted to know what involvement you would want to have in that.
whatever it takes to get it done.
Okay.
Whatever we need to do, you know?
Okay.
I mean, it'll take some time, but you know, as things evolve, you gotta look at what you're doing. And you gotta decide what's best at the time. And you gotta go with what information you have and make the best decision, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Hayes.
Yes, I've known Mr. Ashcraft for 20 years, I think, and I just know he has a big, huge heart and passion for the city. I already know that you would do whatever it takes to learn, and I appreciate the fact that you said that you were retired and that you had time to put into it, and that you were willing to learn. So that was going to be my question: is what kind of time do you have to put into learning something that is completely new to you? And you answered it. So, thanks, Bruce. I'm good.
No.
Then we seem to be, and it's okay, I just want to make it clear to you, some questions are crossing over Board of Zoning Appeals and Zoning Commission, but that's okay. I just want you to know that. So I'm going to ask you a question I asked the last time, and that is, in your opinion, does applying for a $300 variance automatically entitle you to get that variance?
No, absolutely not. Just because they apply doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. So.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
Mr. Ashcraft, known you for a few years too.
Yes.
And I certainly appreciate your honesty. I've always enjoyed that about you. We've had some great conversations. So my question is, Mr. Powell. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Ouch.
Sorry, Mike.
All right.
Swear jar.
Just don't do it again. Swear
jar. Mr. Powell asked the question that I wanted. I just wanted to know how your experience with the fire department would benefit you in either one of these roles. You already answered that. So I guess my only question, since you answered that, is of the two, is there one that you would prefer over the other, and why?
Planning and zoning, I'd much rather do than the appeals, but
okay.
It doesn't matter to me. Whatever works out best for the city.
That's all I have for you.
Mr. Barstow.
Thanks for coming, sir. I don't have any questions.
Mrs. Carter.
Mr. Ashcraft, thanks for coming. You stated clearly that, we need to determine whether we want to be Whitehall or Obetz or Dublin. What would you foresee if you had your choice about how we developed or what went forward for Pataskala?
We need to have something to where we attract good people to come in. The community will not survive 50, 100 years from now, I'm talking about, not in the next 10 to 20 years. But Whitehall, when I was a kid growing up, it was a very viable and good community. Today, it's changed a lot, and I don't think there's anybody here that's familiar with Whitehall. If you spend any time driving through and seeing what's going on and stuff, that wouldn't agree with that. So you have to lay the foundation so people want to come there, people that are making a good living, have good incomes, and the direct reflection of that is the kind of subdivisions you allow to come in and everything else. It's a whole package you got to work on. So, but I don't know what else to say.
No, that's all right. Are there any other questions for Mr. Ashcraft from the council? Okay.
Thank you, Bruce.
Okay, thank you.
We'll look for. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. I stopped mid-sentence there. We're now going to go back, allow the three council persons who missed last time, if they have specific questions of, if they happen to be here, Mr. Fox, Mr. Epperson, Ms. Osborne, Mr. Blair, or Mr. Powell. And I'll give each, actually, any council person, if you have a follow-up question, is welcome to ask it. Just raise your hand to be recognized, and we'll give you that opportunity. But I would like to start with Mr. Walther and see if he has any specific questions for the individuals that you were not able to ask.
No, other than I listened to the tape. I thought that we did get you guys had a lot of good information gleaned from the applicants. Is there, if you could you have them stand up at least, if you could identify who's here and who's
I was
not
going to
here?
ask the same thing, Andy. Thank you.
Sure, and while we're at it, it'll be tough for the microphone to pick up, but if you real loud state your name so everybody knows who you are.
Jason Blair. Dustin Epperson. Tim Powell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mrs. Hayes.
No, I enjoyed listening to everything they had to say, and I have no questions. So it
Excellent.
was nice to put a face. I knew the two. I didn't know Mr. Blair. Thank you.
And Mr. Lee.
Once again, my question was already asked. I just want to see who they were, so I have nothing else.
Any other questions from council?
I do have one thing to say.
Ms. Hayes has another thing.
Well, I rarely have much to say, so I'm just glad you're involved. I mean, I think it's exciting. This was my first endeavor with getting involved with the city. I think it's exciting to see other people that are interested in, and like what Bruce said, what is our city going to be like in the future? And we all have that in common, just that we all believe in the beauty and the magic of this little town that we love, and we really just want to see it at its best. So I just appreciate you going out for this. Thank you. I can keep talking if I need to.
Yeah, I was. Thank you for that. That gave me the opportunity to confirm with our law director that we can entertain motions for these positions now. It's exactly what we would have done if everybody was here at the last meeting. So I would entertain any motions from the floor. I don't think you can make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Well, yeah, there's one on here that I can. I'm
Oh.
going to get that out of the way real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Records Commission, I'm going to make a motion that we put Lisa Osborne on Records Commission.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second. Ms. Hoskinson, can we have a vote for that? Technically, this should be you. Yeah,
It's just a
No,
yeah.
So we don't have to vote on it?
That's just
It's
an
just,
appointment.
it's a
Okay.
mayoral appointment.
All right. So that's out of the way, off the plate. Lisa will be our Records Commission person. Thank you.
Does she join Corey?
I'm sorry?
And she and Corey
She
work
will be
together?
working with Corey.
Okay. With that said, go ahead, Mr. Walther.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Mike Fox to the Planning and Zoning. The reason why I'm making that motion is I feel Planning and Zoning is an extremely important position. It's a gatekeeper for our development. It's something where we need to have a lot of knowledge, a lot of background in the code, and reason why the code was written the way it was, and a lot of back and forth of decisions that have been made in the past years. I think as we know, there are several new members on the Planning and Zoning. I think somebody with the experience that Mike has would be a huge attribute to that commission.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. As a reminder, or is there a discussion? So with that said, as a reminder, this takes a 4 vote.
Majority of council, correct.
Excellent. So that would be 4. Kathy, could we have the roll?
Lee,
No.
Picken,
No.
Walther,
Yes.
Carter,
No.
Powell,
No.
Hayes,
No.
Barstow.
Yes.
That motion is defeated. Do I have Mr. Lee?
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Mr. Dustin Epperson to Planning and Zoning Commission.
I will second that.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Kathy, could we have the roll?
Picken,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes, Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Motion passes. Congratulations, Mr. Epperson. We move on to Board of Zoning Appeals. Do I have a motion for the Board of Zoning Appeals?
You got two down there?
Ms. Hayes.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend Bruce Ashcraft for the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I'll second that.
There's a second from, I heard from both sides.
Either or.
Either or, Mr. Walters. Any discussion? And the roll.
Walther,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
No.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes. Motion passes. Congratulations. Personnel Board of Review. Do I have a motion for the vacancy for the Personnel Board of Review?
Mr. Hicken,
I'm sorry. Ms. Hayes, or I'm sorry, Ms. Carter?
I would like to make a motion to appoint Timothy Powell to the Personnel Board of Review.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Kathy, could we have the vote, please?
the second was,
Second was
I think
Mr. Barstow.
Yes. It was me.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Abstain.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Motion passes. Congratulations. With that said, the only thing that I see on my agenda here is the Licking County Transit Board alternate. I don't know if somebody can hold two positions. That's up to you, Mayor. And as it is up to you, is that correct, Mr. King? I will pass the gavel back to you.
Yeah, right now, we have Mr. Schuler in as a primary. Right now, we're not going to go with an alternate because I put Lisa Osborne in for commissions, so we're just going to leave that open for now.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I was just going to ask if there's anybody else on this list there that would potentially be interested in that.
I'll have to ask him. Mr. Blair, are you interested in being an alternate for Licking County Transit Board? No. Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. We'll work on that.
Okay.
Is that all? Back to the regular agenda, which would be reports. Just a few things I want to note. Special thanks to Scott and Nate and Alan for joining me today at chamber meeting. Those guys backed me up as I read the State of the City address, and we were there to answer any questions, and we had a very receptive audience from folks from just not in Pataskala, but all over, who learned a lot about Pataskala today. So appreciate you guys putting up with me for reading that for another 15, 20 minutes after you guys have already read it, but it was a good day and we had a good lunch. So thank you for your support. And Alan, also, congratulations. I'd say this is roughly Alan's first year anniversary, so thank you, sir. I mentioned at Chamber, President Trump said, I inherited a mess, and I kind of thought of Alan the other day. I mean, it wasn't a complete mess, but you came on board when we had a lot of projects that were already started. You had to pick up the ball and go with it, and everything's turned out very nicely. So, thank you, sir. We have another anniversary too. Gary Smith, one of our detectives, is celebrating 15 years. So, just wanted to shout out to them, to Gary Smith. That is his status, right, detective? Yes. Okay. Was very privileged today to. We had a young lady turn 100 years old today at the Oaks. I got to present her with a proclamation. Kroger stopped in with 100 roses, and it was one of the fun things that I get to do, being involved with the city. Jamie, I know I'd already throw this out to council, but thanks again for your layman terms discussion in the standard. with Mr. Yost, talking about the physical of all the certain entities in Licking County and surrounding areas and their finances, and Pataskala came out very strong, and I appreciate your remarks. I think that's, like I said, layman's terms that everybody could read and understand where we are with our finances. Very important. Andy and Bruce and Mrs. Walther and I were able to sit down and have our first discussion on how we're going to update the current shooting range. It was a very lively discussion about what we'd like to do down there. I know Andy has a workforce that's probably on spring break that's coming in to do some stuff for us, and we started talking about how we're going to improve that area, keep it safe for Nate's folks, and so we're looking at some upgrades on and maybe building a shelter, having a storage facility to put items in, building some nice targets, and putting in a road using grindings and stuff like that. So we're trying to keep it. We haven't come up with any pricing yet. I know a lot of this is, and Andy, you can chime in here in just a second, but I know some of that labor is going to be free with the college students, and I'm reaching out to, I've put a bug in our public service director's ear about some grindings, and there's other sources of grindings in the area to use as a base for that road, so we could build a parking lot and a road to get back there and make it a nicer facility. Anything to add, Mr. Walter?
I not too much more than you said, Mr. Mayor. The guys that are going to be helping, there's about 6 of them that are coming from a couple different fraternities that want to do some public service, and they are very anxious to do a police shooting range. They think that is one of the great things that they're going to be involved with. So, looking forward to working with the chief and yourself.
Any comments on that?
Just happy to have them.
Good. Mr. Vaca notified me, he's from the American Legion, that the ladies have formed their Ladies Auxiliary of the American Legion, and they will be meeting on March 9th at 7 p.m. at the Old Jefferson Street Firehouse. 2 businesses in town that I got to stop into and say hi that have sprung up. The Bargain Barn down by the antique store. These guys, I stopped in twice. They get bulk items in, and there's people. They told me they've had people come in as far away from Michigan to pick up these items. A lot of people buy pallets of stuff, take them home. It's kind of like a mystery package, and they take them apart and look what they can get and put them online. And it's was very busy the other day when I stopped in. And also, a family venture has started up right back here on top of the Capital City Chrome building back here. A gentleman has started a family business involving slot cars. And I stopped up over the weekend. Didn't know it was there. He'd been there a year and was full of activity both Saturdays and Sundays. It's open to the public, obviously, and very nice facility, very family-oriented. That's kind of a throwback to when I was a kid. Slot cars were pretty popular, so obviously they're still popular now. So if you get a chance on the weekend, stop up and say hi to those guys. So two neat little businesses in town that have popped up. With the weather cooperating the way it was, and since I wasn't throwing any salt or pushing any snow, I went ahead and did my first round on Havens Corners picking up trash. I would encourage all of council and anybody in the audience that might want to adopt a part of a roadway in Pataskala to help keep our city clean. I try to do it twice a year on Havens Corners, and it's funny what you find in the trash. It's still basically beer cans and beer bottles, so that always strikes the fear of God in me because people are obviously drinking and driving. So that's the frustrating part of it, besides having to pick up the trash. But every year it does get smaller. I think the first year I did it was 25 bags of trash. It's gone down over the years, and I think it was 7 or 8 bags of trash this time. So it's getting better, but it's still not super good. So thanks to Public Service guys for picking up those bags of trash for me. Appreciate it. We have 2 pancake breakfasts this weekend. One at the Full Armor Church down on Broad, right next to the Pataskala Bank, and also the American Legion at the old Jefferson fire station. Both of them start at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning, and now that there's a competition, the American Legion has now added blueberries to their pancakes. So,
Ooh.
okay, that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple items. The first one is for anybody that happened to see the earlier before council tonight, we are getting jammed up. So much business is being done in the city that we're starting to get jammed up between agricultural committee hearings and then the open public hearings that go along with that. And I've asked Kathy, and I'll dedicate myself as well, and also Mr. Fulton, we're going to work a little bit to tweak the schedule so that we hopefully have those shorter meetings that seem to take place, especially in the spring and late in winter. We have those right up close to the actual hour of council, and that leaves us a lot more time on the backside open for committees, because half hours for committees, given all the stuff that we're doing in the city, just aren't doing it. The mayor mentioned it briefly, but I would ask everybody to remember the family of Kenny King in your prayers. A long time dedicated public servant who passed away this week. I know I told you guys I was going to get evaluations out, so here's my apology. I didn't get them out yet. I was looking for them electronically, and I didn't seem to find them. So I will continue to do that. Look for those evaluations to come through. Those are for the positions of finance director, city administrator, and law director. So look for those to come down the pipe. The last thing is just a reminder, I've been taking the open meetings course from the state of Ohio. It's something I pointed out before. Kathy sent the link. It's an opportunity for you to take the course, and it doesn't get you any special credit or anything, but maybe continuing credit if you're an attorney. I've found it to be eye-opening, and just a reminder, everybody's got that email link. Log in. It's extremely boring, but it also is if that can happen. So I realize I'm not selling it, but and with that said, I'm done.
Very good. Mr. Zetz?
I feel boring because I've read that manual so many times now. I don't know what
You
that
loved
says.
it.
And I loved it. It's riveting. Meetings. BJ had asked me to talk about the medical marijuana. Actually, I don't know if council mind if I actually head to the podium. It's a little easier if I talk to you from down there as opposed to continually walking or switching back and forth. So, yeah.
We need your address.
Hey, my name and address. Columbus, Ohio, 43215. Medical marijuana. I'll try and. I guess I took a look. I've given presentations to different groups, so I have a good understanding of the. I always when I talk to folks, it's always twofold: zoning and employment. We'll cut it right to the zoning issues because that's really what council is going to be looking at now. I guess questions for later on will also be how's it addressed in the city's personnel employee handbook, because there are some issues that can be dealt with there. But I suggest taking that on a separate day for a separate conversation. I did actually take a look at just today to try and get the most updated information. I would say at the outset, there's actually a very good website. It's medicalmarijuana.ohio.gov. That website's been set up, and it is very informative. You can actually see the agendas for the committee that's been formed. You can see, everything that they're putting out, their agendas, the publications, everything that you need to know about medical marijuana in Ohio can be found on that website. So it is a great resource if you want to be super nerdy and keep up on exactly the way the rules are being developed. As you all know, medical marijuana is here in Ohio, is a thing here to stay. So it's something that we have to take a look at. Simply stated, medical marijuana has been defined simply as marijuana that's cultivated, processed, dispensed, tested, possessed, or used for medical purposes. It's a very simple definition, and that's what it is. There's still a dichotomy between the federal government and the state governments. Federal government still considers marijuana a Schedule I drug. And because it is a Schedule I drug, it is an illegal substance. Just by way of background, so actually over the course of the last 30 years, people have tried to get marijuana moved from Schedule I down to Schedule II. The last effort was just at the end of last year, and that effort was basically, the request was denied by the DEA. So it is still a Scheduled I drug in the eyes of the federal government. If you're saying, hey, Brian, what's really a Schedule I drug mean? Back end of the definition of a Schedule I drug says there's no currently accepted medical use, and it's a high potential for drug abuse. So, here's the whole dichotomy between the federal system, which considers it a drug that has no accepted medical use, and Ohio, which became the 25th state, plus Washington, D.C., to say medical marijuana is something that could be used for medical purposes. Like I said, there is an advisory committee that's put together. There's 14 people on the advisory committee. They were appointed by different people in the General Assembly and the governor. There's no one from any city or township or county association. There's no lawyers on there. There's a bunch of other folks, doctors, pharmacists. Those are the people who are setting up the original rules and trying to get this put together. The timeline is one of the most important things to think about. The House Bill 523 became effective September 8th, and really by September 8th of this year is when everything's supposed to be put into place. That's exactly the way it works. The next deadline that's in the phase is May 6th, and that's when the Department of Commerce is going to adopt what they call the cultivator rules. What happened was if you look at Ohio Revised Code Section 3796 is the medical marijuana statute. And in there was a general outline of what was going to happen. But the real rules, how do I get a license to cultivate? What's going to be a dispensary? What physicians are going to be able to hand these out? All those criteria, none of that was in the rules. None of that's in the revised code. So when people originally, at the end of last year, people were rushing to try and put on moratoriums or get things in place. I was involved in online discussions, these groups from the municipal league and whatnot. I kept asking people, what are you putting on moratoriums to do? There were no good answers. That's why I didn't really push anybody, including Pataskala, to say, you got to get legislation on the books at the end of last year, because it was meaningless, because there were no rules. You had no idea what was going on. But, that was end of 2016. Fast forward to today, things are moving forward. What happens is they put out proposed rules for cultivators and retail dispensaries and processors, and they'll let the public comment on these. And then when the public comments come back in, then they take a look and say, well, do we need to tweak the rules? When you take a look at the rules for the cultivators have been pushed out and they've come back and been tweaked. The dispensaries have been pushed out. The comments have now come back in. The physicians, these rules are all in the process of being developed. The statute says all of them, all of the rules for all phases from cultivation to patient responsibility will be fully vetted and complete and on the books, really as part of the administrative code, by September 8th. I think it's going to, I think you're going to see maybe some of these quicker. The cultivator rules have to be in place by May 6th. The rest of them have to be in place by September 8th, 2017. They're already, the rules are being, like I said, the dispensary rules have already been commented. So, I don't know, maybe the General Assembly and the Advisory Committee will wait till September to finish out all the rules, but I think you're going to see them, there's a chance that they'll be in place even before September 8th. Cultivators, absolutely by May 6th. The rest of the rules in place by September 8th. The two things really to think of when we think about zoning, it's the cultivators and the retail dispensaries and the processors. There's also like testing facilities, but they're actually no governmental entity can regulate those. It's processors, cultivators, processors, and retail facilities. We know today that there will be what they call, well, there'll be 12 level 1 and 12 level 2 cultivating facilities in any one designated territory within the state. First time I'd ever read that, I thought, well, what in the world does in any one designated area of the state mean? Real curious about it all, and you read through the definitions, and all it means is a specific region within the state is determined by the program. So if any of you can tell me where these 12 of them can be, I'd love to, because there's no magic language anywhere in the code or in the rules. But there will be 12 level 1 facilities and 12 level 2. It's interesting to note when the rules were initially pushed out, those numbers were half. It was 6, I believe it was 6 and 3. The proposed rules got pushed out, public commented and came back. And they said there's not enough cultivation licenses going to be made available. Next thing you know, the revised code actually, or the administrative code now says there'll be 12 level 1 and 12 level 2 facilities.
Brian, can I ask a quick question?
Any questions along the way?
Do you mean there's 12 total in Ohio or 12 in any region? So do you have, sounds like it's 12 in any region. The question is, how many regions are there? So therefore, how many cultivators are there? A million? I don't know. How many regions are there?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what, there's no definition for, I mean, the designated territory is literally defined up in the revised code as any specific region within the state is determined by the program. Yes, at some point, they're going to determine, the program's going to determine where the regions are, and they're going to let you know where these facilities are going, where cultivation facilities are going to be able to be located.
And thereby how many?
Thereby how many?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, there's not, I mean, I don't know what that means, and so, but there are 12 level 1 and 12 level 2 facilities in any one designated territory. A level 1 cultivation facility means an operation that's up to 25,000 square feet, and that's been clearly defined. Level 2 is a cultivation facility that's up to 3,000 square feet. And I don't know exactly if that means the area that's only for cultivation versus the rest of the building and operation that goes along with it, or if that's the entire tract of land where a cultivation facility is going to be. But you're going to basically, call a level 1 facility 25,000 square feet, and a level 2 will be 3,000 square feet.
Brian, does it say whether they anticipate that being like under roof?
No, they don't, and that's what I mean. There's nothing really in there described. That's what I meant. I don't know if that means, truly the plant's under a roof, and then that could be 25,000 square feet, and then you could have additional square footage for whatever other buildings go along with running the under roof facility. I don't. There's nothing clear in the statutes or in the rules that talk about what it's going to be. 25,000 square foot facility.
I guess my question is, could it be just an open field?
Looking at the way these usually are set up, the answer to that is no. I mean, usually you're not. I would say you're not going to drive down a set of corn and see marijuana because you'd probably be Thunderdome at that point in time. Last one's a good movie. Just because these are very. You're not going to have. I don't think you're going to have. These facilities are highly secure. The regulations make them highly secure. The dispensary, retail dispensaries are highly secure facilities. One, because you're growing marijuana, and then two, you're selling a product that's probably only going to be taking cash business. So you have highly regulated, highly scrutinized facilities on both the growing and, the processing plants, the testing facilities, and the retail dispensaries.
Okay.
Very, very highly regulated. But then, just in case 25,000 square feet is not good enough, on my anniversary, September 9th of this year, there actually is another provision in the code that says that the director of the program can approve a one-time marijuana cultivation area expansion that would allow a level 1 to go from 25,000 to 50,000 square feet, and then a level 2 to go to an additional, go from 3,000 to 6,000. And it's based upon if the population of the state and the number of patients seeking to use medical marijuana supports such an extension, is the way the administrative code reads. So basically, you're going to have 12 and 12 of 25,000 to 6,000 square feet. If But then it's September, because apparently, the cultivation rules are put in place in May, people are going to start applying. They're going to figure out where the designated territories are, where the facilities are going to be, some idea if 25,000 is large enough. At some point in time, they'll be able to be an expansion of from 25, basically doubling the square footage size if basically supply and demand are going to warrant it. And, I always say, I don't know, this is just a section of the administrative code that could be changed later on down the line. I guess if at some point everyone determines 50 and 6,000 square feet aren't enough, and you need 75,000 and 9,000, those numbers, I guess, arguably could go up again. But for right now, those are the numbers that Ohio is looking at. So that's the big key. Those numbers are locked in place now because it is part of the official administrative code. With respect to dispensaries, there is the rules are still in the process, and that's why I checked even today, because they pushed out the proposed rules and they got comments back, and there's a few things I thought that were interesting and important for folks to understand. Comments came back in the areas that you figured they would, and that is number of dispensaries, dispensary fees. The original recommended rule for number of dispensaries was going to be 40. It would be 40 dispensaries. They are now proposing, because of the comments that came back, that there could be 60 dispensaries. Now, it'll be hard to tell exactly where all those are going to be, but they're going to be based upon state population, patient population, because the notes that were on the website, even as of today, they said they're going to, they're going to have to they said taking only geographical distribution into account, there'd be need for 34 dispensaries, so no patient is more than 25 miles from a dispensary. So somehow they're going to have to figure out where people are, where they're going to want to buy, and then have these now proposed 60 retail dispensaries in Ohio. So someone doesn't have to drive more than, I don't know, maybe 20 miles to get to a dispensary. So have a retail dispensary area available to them. So I thought that was interesting. Like I said, the original rules went out as proposed, 40 dispensaries in Ohio. The recommendation as of right now, and actually the advisory committee meeting is 2 days from now, I think, 2 days now. The agenda's not up as of this afternoon, so you can't really see what's going to happen at the meeting, but they're going to meet again. So they may be, they may get a vote on these regulations for the dispensaries. One of the other interesting comments was that the recommendation was to decrease the dispensary certification operation fee. These, if you take a look and you really delve into the details if you want to, these are very expensive endeavors for folks. If you're going to cultivation licenses, renewals, the dispensary facilities, the bonds, the cash on hand that you have to have. You're not. My understanding and thinking is, these aren't going to be little fly-by-night operations who are going to apply for a retail dispensary place. You're going to have to be. You're going to have to be a well-established business to do this. I would think we'll likely see businesses who do this elsewhere not trying to come to Ohio to expand their business. I don't think there's any way for mom and pop aren't going to open a retail marijuana dispensary. I find that almost impossible. An interesting little quirk of the rules the recommendations that came back had to do with home delivery. This is the first time I actually saw this, but due to public response and the increase in the number of dispensaries, home delivery is now not being recommended.
Good idea. I think that's
I
a
never
good
knew
idea.
you could actually do that, but so they're going to increase the number of dispensaries, so you will not, as of now, have home delivery of medical marijuana. So, for the processing facilities, the rules were pushed out. Comments have come back, and they are going to have 40, again, of rather loose definition, but right now the rule says, and this is part of the administrative code, they'll issue up to 40 provisional licenses prior to September 8th, 2018. This is for the processors. Remember, so you have cultivation, processing, testing, dispensing. So you're also going to be able to have 40 provisional licenses for processing facilities with no more than 10 in any designated territory. Somehow I think the supply chain will all be sort of close, I would imagine, because I wouldn't think you'd grow it here, ship it across the state, process it, ship it somewhere else, and test it. So, but right now that's what they're going to do. And then, as a fallback, the director has a discretion to issue additional processor licenses on that magical date of September 9th, 2018. So, just so you have some idea, when you're talking at least about the processors, because these were on the most recent numbers for fees. I mean, the application to process medical marijuana is $10,000. The licensing fee is $90,000, and the renewal fee is another $100,000. Guessing.
What percentage, or does the municipality get any part of that, or is that all to the state?
All of the state.
Does the municipality have the option or the opportunity to, there's always permits that the municipality puts on top of different licensing processes. Do they have the option to do that?
I think we have the option to, yes. Okay. To answer the question, yes. You're not going to be able to tax it because we can't tax things, but yeah, if there are permitting fees, yeah, it would be no different than any other type of permitting fee. So, like I said, I mean, these are sophisticated, money endeavors and money-making businesses. If anyone really wants to, there's a list if you really want to have an idea of the conditions that are the qualifying medical conditions. I mean, there's a list of 21 of them in the revised code. A list of somewhat very debilitating, life-threatening illnesses to something as, I don't want to minimize or say simply as like fibromyalgia or basically, there's diseases on the list where you'd say that medical condition may prevent people from working or doing things. Others on the list, people can probably get by daily with the help of medical marijuana or whatever medications they're taking that to try and treat their pain or whatever they're going through. Some things quickly to thing to remember, and that is smoking isn't prohibited. It's the oils, textures, edibles. If you want to do real interesting research, Google medical marijuana edibles one night. Jump on like High Times magazine and see the plethora of foods that you can become and they can be infused. I mean, it is. You eat it, it can be infused with cannabis. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, actually, it's kind of interesting to look through it all because it's people always brownies or it's not. It's any type of food you want. The most important thing for the city to think about, and that is with respect to the zoning regulations, and it's simple and it's straightforward. There's a revised code section 3796. And it's very simple. It says the legislative authority of a municipal corporation may adopt an ordinance to prohibit or limit cultivators, processors, or retail dispensaries. So the threshold question, I gave you a little bit of that background so you have some ideas about numbers, about, okay, what are these cultivation facilities? What are these retail dispensing facilities? How big are the cultivation facilities? Because if you choose, you have the ability to prohibit it or limit it. So I guess arguably you could say we do not want any cultivators, processors, or retail dispensaries, or if for some reason, if Pataskala is located within a designated territory within the state, we want one. I don't know how more than one would be, but again, the rules are out there and they're a little clearer than they were 9 months ago, but no one really knows what a territory is. No one really knows where folks are going to be wanting to locate any of this part of the supply chain.
Would we have to, that, and I get what you're saying as far as, prohibiting everything, prohibiting one or the other. Since this is not addressed in our zoning code currently, and council, chose not to prohibit, would we have to add it to our zoning code? There's nothing in our code right now that addresses it.
Well, I guess yes and no. I mean, arguably it could be considered might be considered some sort of agricultural product. I mean, the retail dispensaries, I mean, that could be anywhere you can put a retail shop, you could have a retail dispensary located. I mean, it's just business. Don't worry about what they're selling. It's just business.
I don't know if that's necessary too. I mean, adult stores are regulated or prohibited in certain areas. They're not at any retail. So they could be in a prohibitive or a conditional use type of situation.
Well, you're saying if you just were to allow it.
I'm saying the same thing. Obviously, under a zoning law, you have to provide an area for some type of adult,
Right.
store, but you can't put it at any retail location because it is prohibited in all locations but the one that you allowed it.
So in
But
that's,
this isn't the, I mean, because this is different because you can prohibit it. So you can, like with a, adult facility or something, you say, okay, we're zoning everything over to this side of town. And unfortunately, that side of town is all the things we didn't want everywhere else. I mean, you could, if it's allowed, if you don't prohibit it, you could be allowed in any, I guess you could pick and choose.
That's what I'm saying. You could do the same thing as you did with the adult. You're not prohibiting, you're just restricting.
Yeah, I guess you could.
That's what I think I'm trying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I guess you could, if it was, I don't know, all the commercial zoning codes, but, if there's, you say you wanted in a certain, allow it as a use in this particular zoning code, I guess you could allow it like that as opposed to.
I got a follow-up to that also. Does our zoning code right now prohibit illicit activities? I thought there was something in there. There was and Scott, you may be able to help on this. Is there something that says that you cannot zone an illegal activity?
I don't think it's expressly written in there, but I think just from the fact it's illegal would automatically, I guess by default, preclude it from being
I have to look at it
allowed.
again. I thought there was okay. And then it's a definition of what's illegal activity.
Well, I mean, it is I mean, as far as the
If we're
state
going
of
under
Ohio-
federal code.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So that's, so really that, and it's, that's the question everyone is facing right now, and that is, what do we want to do with it? Do we want to prohibit it in some fashion? Do we want to limit it? Do we want to accept it? I mean, you look at places, there are places out there who say, it's a business, it's tax dollars, we'll allow it. An interesting thing, thinking about tax dollars is that if you're talking cultivation and you're talking growing it in a field, we all understand CAUV tax exemption. The growing of medical marijuana does not qualify for CAUV tax credit. A little caveat the General Assembly decided to put in there. So if you have your 25,000 acres or 25,000 square foot facility, acres would be a big place. 25,000 square foot facility, I mean, you would not get CAUV tax credit for that. Now, whether or not that's, you could get agricultural district, I mean, those are different questions, but as far as the revised code on the tax exceptions apply, it's not CAUV. In the full federal tax bill. That's really where the law is. I suggest, whatever council wants to decide to do, that we start to think about that, because, I mean, absolutely by May 6th, the cultivation, people are going to start applying on May 7th for cultivation licenses through the state of Ohio. And we may start to see, I actually know of a place where there wasn't a real formal request made, but I know, one of our clients got just a random call from some facility who said, hey, we're thinking about your area for cultivation. What's your council thinking about this? My thought was that they, want to take the passive least resistance. So probably if these folks come back and say we're not going to allow it, they'll probably move on. But I don't know that. But there are groups out there now really starting to focus in, I believe, on where they want to put cultivation and processing and testing facilities. And there's probably folks on the other end that are going to, as soon as September 9th hits, are going to want to put in applications for retail dispensaries. So, that's why I said, September of last year, not a real concern. Wait to see what happens now. I mean, we're at the forefront of, figuring out what, if anything, we want to do. And then, on the flip side, we have to follow up with the city manual, because there are things we could do if council wants to regulate that through the handbook.
Brian, in your research on the comments and the notes that came back, is it basically generally they're going to follow Colorado's lead in how they form these these processors and cultivators? Essentially, is that their direction they're going, since there's already established rules out in Colorado?
I don't know the real answer to that, because I don't know exactly what all of Colorado's rules are. I mean, I know that, you know, the cultivation, I mean, it is highly, highly regulated here. So, I mean, I don't know if they actually track exactly what Colorado has done, just because I've never really line itemed them all, but
That's been-
my suspicion is we did not recreate the wheel.
That's been my understanding, is they are trying to Xerox or copy essentially what they've done out there. One other question. I wanted to mention that I received an email just out of the blue from somebody who wanted to do a presentation. I assume all of council got the same email. I guess, in my opinion, we should have at least, I mean, I don't think I should be responding directly back to them. I don't think, Mike or anybody else should be directly responding back to them. At least if they're going to present a proposal, I don't know who we're identifying as somebody that will respond to that, to this group, AZ something or another. AZ out of Arizona, I believe. Premier Management, AZ Premier Management out of, it looked like Arizona area code. So I think, we should probably have at least a lead person that's responding to that kind of stuff.
Well, when I get that stuff, I forward it to BJ and Mr. Zett so that they can at least look at it and give us an idea, and I let them.
What I recommend, May 6th is going to be here before we know it. And any legislation that we do is going to have to be doesn't have to be 3 readings, they can be waived, but typically it would go 3 readings for a code change. Would this be subject to public notification as well, since it is a code change?
I always take the opinion that's no, because I think I always have the view that council has the ability to change the rules in the code. I mean, you're not rezoning property or doing something where you're saying we got to notify people of a certain, of a zoning map change or something, or a variance or something like that, as opposed to council decides it wants to change the rules of the code with this or any other matter. Say, well, we're going to remove some other permitted use and make it flip it to a conditional use. I think council has the ability to do that without some public notification that there's a zoning change, because it's not a zoning change, it's a change of the rules. So no, but you will have to go, it has to be an ordinance, because by the statute it has to be an ordinance, so you can't do a 1 reading resolution. So you'd be looking at least 2 or 3 full readings, and then if you're talking 3 full readings, you're talking 30 days after that. So you want to have this, if you're going to do anything, you want to have it in place before, basically by the end of April.
Brian, how can we write an ordinance that we don't have rules to base on at this point? I mean, you've discussed the cultivation rules aren't due until May 6th. We don't know what the districts will be, or the regions will be, or how many there'll be. How do we write an ordinance that doesn't have rules to base on?
Well, because I think you have to think of more conceptually, and that is a level up one, and that is, do we want these facilities? I would just assume you could have one. Do you want to be able to have a cultivation, processing, or retail distributors within?
But we've talked about a variable amount of questions that we're talking about. Do we want one? Do we want to put them in a certain location? Do we want to? There's a number of different. Yes, there is a basic question. Would we even entertain one?
Right.
That's the first question. And then, if so, yes. How do we do that? And then, I'm still stuck on the federal law hasn't changed. So, does our zoning code allow for illegal activity to be zoned?
I think the zoning code, unless you prohibit it, is going to allow it, because there is a specific mandate in 3796-29 that gives you the ability to prohibit it or limit it, and there's a specific township provision in 519 to limit it or prohibit it.
And that's wholesale prohibit or limit it.
Right. Yes.
Not, hey, we'll prohibit it to the point we're only going to allow 2 and not 7.
Well, no, that'd be limited. You could prohibit or limit. So I think someone will turn around and say, because you're not going to really have a federal claim, they'll narrow it into a state claim and say, this is an allowed state activity. It is allowed. So you could say, well, it violates the federal law. Somebody's going to say, well, I'm not saying it's a violation of a federal statute or regulation.
But my example would be if our code said that we don't permit any zoning to a federally illegal activity, therefore, this would be not permitted. Correct?
I don't think it says that.
No.
I said if we had changed it to that. So anyhow, I'll leave
I
that
wouldn't
be.
go,
I'll leave
honestly,
that
I
be.
wouldn't do that. I guess you could do that, but then I would fall back and say, if that's what you're going to say, then I would also then pass an ordinance under 379629 to say you're prohibiting it.
I understand.
Questions, comments?
Does it make sense, to get the ball rolling discussion? Would it be council's desire for something to be presented one way or not a recommendation necessarily, but just some legislation? So we get the ball rolling and we can start crafting it backwards from then, I guess you can say. So so it started at least. Legislation can be changed throughout the readings by amendments. This would at least get us started down the path.
I see what you're saying, BJ. But with so many unknowns and so much of it not written, I mean, I guess my question is what would be the disadvantage to just wait until either May or September when it's more clearly defined?
Because here's what you should be concerned with. You wait until May 7th if you wait till May 7th and you're gonna have an application put in, and then
Okay.
you're not gonna be able to do anything but approve it.
Then how do we navigate all the?
See, but I don't agree that there's a whole lot to navigate, because you have to determine
Okay.
whether or not you want them or limit them, and then you can move from there to say, you don't have to know all the ins and outs of how to get a cultivation license or be licensed at a dispensary, but to figure out, do I want them or do I want to limit them? If you want to prohibit them, that's easy. It doesn't matter. If you want to limit them, then you could decide what Andy's talking about, and that is, okay, well, do I want them in a certain area or something? You could answer those questions and put on legislation. If you wait, someone puts an application, it's out of your hands.
So
You're
it's
not
that
gonna
cut
be
and
able to
dry.
do anything.
It's that cut and dry then.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I got a call the other day from the prosecutor up in Mahoney County, which is kind of weird. My family lives up there, and like the Mahoney County prosecutor's office called me, and I was like, "What's going on?" Yeah, a question about zoning, not my family. Because she was working with a couple of the townships up there that they represent, and they had some questions and talking about legislation actually. So I do think this aspect of it is that cut and dry.
Okay. Maybe I was overthinking it a little bit.
That's what it was way too hard in last September when when the House bill became effective, because you really knew nothing. You didn't know how many retailers, how many cultivation, what the sizes were. So it'd be kind of hard to say, well, do I want this here? Now you know what this is, and assuming it could be here.
Okay.
From your numerous discussions, have you, like with the Mahoning County people, have you been able to discern when people are crafting legislation at a municipal level, do they start with not allowing it and then through the reading process and the changing process add things in, or do they start with allowing everything and taking stuff away through the
Actually,
I assume nobody starts in the middle, but maybe
Right.
I'm wrong.
Actually, all the ones I've heard of and been in conversations with, they've started with strict prohibitions, and I got a feeling they're going to end with strict prohibitions, because that's just what they want to do. Someone had asked me actually at the township meeting, they said, well, what if everybody prohibits them? I said, ma'am, I got a feeling someone's going to allow them.
Yeah.
And that place is going to
And I guess you wouldn't, if you, it would make sense to start at the other end, right? Because on May 7th, you get them anyway.
Right.
Brian, we could start off by prohibiting them, and then actually have an ordinance to say prohibit them, and then work backward from that if we decided that we wanted to allow, if we got a proposal from somebody and say, well, we want to build, I know you've prohibited, but we want to build a 25,000 square foot, whatever, et cetera. And then could we then modify our ordinance? How would we do it?
I think you could. That's a good idea. I'd never thought of something like that. But I say it is no different than any other zoning regulation. So yeah, if you said, okay, well, council's just going to prohibit everything across the board today, in the middle of July, someone comes to you and says, hey, I got a really nice design or this or that, and I guess council would have the ability to. You could back off that and change it like you could any provision of the zoning code. If if you wanted to. Now, that would arguably open, if you open it up, though, I mean, you would be opening it up to, not this person, but this type of facility or something, either whether it be cultivation or retail. But you could start today with a straight prohibition and wait to see what happens. And if you got approached, you could change the code. But like I said, you'd be opening up. If you were in a designated territory and, you could open the window for a couple more, but it's possible.
I think
can see it.
I think what Mr. Lee's question is, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think his question is, the confusion is how are these going to be distributed around the state? That's the mystery. We don't know. I mean, the plan is for no one has to go more than, since we don't have
25 miles.
Since we don't have since we don't have home delivery, nobody has to go more than 20 or 25 miles to pick up. I mean, townships and municipalities are going to start maybe prohibiting. It's good to me that's sort of the unknown part. But I think what's going to happen is people are going to start. These places are going to start prohibiting. There will be some places, I think we know where they are, the Yellow Springs and places like that are going to say, come on. Mm-hmm. But then the people who want to invest in this, no matter what their function is, distributor or whatever are going to have to then see, well, even though this place is prohibited, we're still going to come to them and say, hey, we want to come here because you're sort of centrally located. There's nobody else who's permitted in your area. We want to come to you and do whatever it is we're going to do. Right. Distribution, cultivation, what was the third one? Manufacturing. Processing. So.
Right. I agree. I mean, eventually, because that's the whole idea about, could the number increase, at September 9th of this year? Because it's all going to be based upon this idea of supply and demand. Though I still don't understand. I don't think September 9th they're really going to know because, the physicians, all the rules will be set up, so no one's going to be able to get a recommendation before September 9th of 2017 anyway. So it's going to be hard to say, who's going to be allowed, how you won't really know what the supply is anywhere in the state until you actually see who's out there seeking recommendations and what physicians are writing recommendations. They're not prescriptions, because then they'd be subject to other rules.
And I think that to me that's not the confusing part, but it's the unknown part. Right. So I don't think that prohibiting it would necessarily preclude you from being offered one of these places if you're not prohibiting it for until the end of time. I mean, exactly. You have
the ability to see how the landscape shakes out a little bit.
So they're setting it up so no one has to drive more than 25, miles to get this. What if all these municipalities start with these prohibitions and then there's a problem with the majority with a good portion of the population unable to, or they're not within that distance? Would they start mandating?
I doubt it.
No.
I guess I fall back to someone in some area will say,
it's pretty safe to say Reynoldsburg or somebody will say, sure, let's take the money. Our neighbors are going to say, let's take the money.
25 miles from here is a pretty big, you can get a lot of places from 25 miles. So, it's just my suspicion is that's what will eventually happen. I mean, you think about you could have it in any, it could be any township, anybody, anywhere.
In your research, Brian, have you determined, have they projected any type of, financial, both permitting and tax-wise, have they projected any type of money that will be made by one of these, either cultivators, processors, or, retailers? I mean, that's a piece of information that I think goes into this decision if you want to prohibit or not. And I say that only because I have no idea if we're talking about $1 million or if we're talking about $10,000. And I want to mention, it isn't what I think, it's what the city thinks and what the city wants. And, we talk about what these budget items that we want to approve and finance, and then to turn away some type of permitted while be limited use. I think that's a difficult discussion for us seven to have and make that decision. And I'll go one step further. When this was in front of, I think, the school district, I saw the school district do a 180-degree change when they were talking about the money they were going to see coming in. I just letting you know that I know Southwest Licking's got a huge bond number on the ballot, and so does Licking Heights. So for us to make a determination that's going to take money out of their pockets also, and I say it in that way only because if this is regulated like Colorado, if this is regulated heavily and there's big fees to be paid, and it's not a mom and pop, it's not the gangs running the show, it's a corporation running it, and it's highly secure and so forth, and it's put in the right place. I can see a lot of thought going into this to say this is what we want. Scott, I'm sure you're thinking, oh, there's maybe a place over here, a place over there that works for this. As I said, our neighbors will say yes to this. I'm just telling you, I know they will.
I agree.
So anyhow, I just want to mention that this is a difficult decision because it's complex, and we've got schools that are involved in this too. Not that they are going to promote that we've got a cultivator in Pataskla, but they're certainly going to take the money from the taxes.
But the taxes that the school, the school get are the property tax, and that's we don't get much from property tax. They get if it goes into Southwest Licking, there'll be an income tax because Southwest Licking has an income tax. If Heights, I don't know if Heights has an income tax back on the ballot. I don't live in that district, but
it'll be property.
But it'll be property tax. So it's a little bit different for the tax models. But Andy's right. With issue 3. That was completely different, and I don't think we would have gotten very much money at all out of issue 3. I think we had very, very little the way that was set up. But what Brian has said is that all these large licensing fees, that all goes back to the state of Ohio, and so we'll be looking at income tax revenue on. I think our biggest bang for the buck would be on a cultivator or a processor where you'd have a lot of people. The shop wouldn't think would be a whole lot of people working there. I don't know.
From what I've seen out in Colorado, just by what you see on TV, there's some major improvements that are made to cultivate this product, and not only that, but the amount of testing that goes into it and so forth. That if you had a testing and a cultivator on the same site, you're talking about a very high property tax increase. The value of that property goes up tremendously. I'm not making a case one way or the other. I really am not. I'm just saying that we just approved a huge money for a police station. I want to make sure that we have all the facts in front of us before we go forward with a prohibition and lose. If there's going to be 25, if there's one region and there's 25 cultivators, and they go and find their spots in the state, and we have a prohibition on the board on the books. We're not going to be one of the spots they're going to come look at. They're going to find 25 of them, and that'll be that.
My concern on this, Andy, and I agree with what you say. My concern in this is that it would end up being more like the California model opposed to the Colorado model. And the California model has had some real problems, and we've talked about this. And I know Chief has talked about the problems that have come to the county as a result of the poor regulation in the California model. That would be my concern.
I agree, and that's why I asked if the comments that came back, because I believe the comments that came back were to model the Colorado model, but I'd have to do some research on that.
Either way, though, we're going to have to figure out where the starting point is, right? That's really what we need to decide how we move forward.
Dispensaries that I didn't say, the recommendation is because there's hours of operation with respect to dispensaries, and it was the original recommendation was 7 to 7. After the comments, they're now recommending 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. For what that's worth, just so you know.
But Brian, just to be clear, the retailers, you can prohibit a retailer and permit a cultivator.
Right, yeah. You
can do one or two or the other or whatever mix and match.
But just so you know, if you allow dispensaries in some zoning district, if you will, the hours are 7 a to 9 p.
Understand.
For some reason, that's people go buy medical marijuana. I have no idea.
Because there's no home delivery.
There's no home delivery. Right. Just give Amazon a little chance.
No drone delivery.
No drone delivery.
Anything else for Brian?
Thank you.
Okay, very informative, and
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
are you suggesting a first step?
Well, if May 6th, again, is going to be here pretty quickly, and I don't know if, there may be even a time in there where this would be tabled for discussion, or our new council rules, if there's an amendment at the third reading, it has to go to a fourth reading. So, the clock's ticking on us. I recommend having a first step and getting something in front of council to get the ball rolling. As Brian said, maybe the easiest place, and not necessarily a recommendation, is to do the prohibition and start working backwards from that point to see whether we want to go ahead then and change that to allow the cultivation or allow the dispensaries. But I think we need to get the ball rolling real soon.
Is it
I would
count-
like to do that at the first meeting in March if possible.
Is it council's pleasure that we let Mr. Zetz craft something for us?
I would just add one piece to that. I view this kind of as the adult facility also, and I think that there could be, and Scott could weigh in on this, but I think there could be a locale, a place that you could zone this or permit it. I'm not talking about retail necessarily, but the processing and the cultivating could be identified for a location, in my opinion. And I'm not disagreeing with BJ that a prohibition platform could be thought through, as well as a permitted type of ordinance could be thought through.
Yeah, either or, just so we
I agree that it should be started.
Yeah, so we
I
get the
agree.
ball rolling. I don't, we can start at the permitting, we can start at the prohibition. We've got to start at one of those ends, though.
It's interesting. I always bring this up when I talk about it because it's interesting because you can prohibit or limit cultivators, processors, or dispensaries, but the lab testing facilities aren't in that laundry list. So I don't know. I guess they're allowed to go wherever they want to go. I mean, I don't know. I don't know exactly what's in that facility, but there are at least samples going somewhere to be tested to make sure. So there's like THC levels, and there's that part's all regulated as to what it really means to be medical marijuana. So arguably, you could have a campus that had,
Yeah. And it may be worthwhile looking at that.
Yeah. You'll work on that for us?
the prohibition.
Is that where you want to start, folks?
Start there. It doesn't matter to me. I don't.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know where the best place to start it. I think maybe throw out a couple options. I think everybody here has made really valid points, and I'm kind of going back and forth on the whole thing. So I just want to let it sink in and maybe see a couple different options. And I'm kind of intrigued by some of the things that Andy had mentioned as well. I don't want to limit us, and
I don't know if I can. We have to have a piece of legislation, and it has to do something. That's why I said it has to be some place to start.
Well, I think
That's
what
why
Tommy's
you
saying
can't
and
be
what
like-
I'm saying is there's actually, we'd like to see two options.
Two or
One
th-
with a prohibition and one with a limiting or with Scott's help, an area identified as a limiting or a permitting type of ordinance.
So I think what we want is starting out with prohibition, not starting out. One of those is to prohibit both. One is to permit. We said we can prohibit, we can permit, or we can limit.
See both.
So, what we're talking about is the prohibition, which, those exist out there. The other one would be the limitation to say, hey, we're going to allow, and I'll use dispensaries as the example, we'll allow the dispensaries, but we're only going to allow them in the
Wherever identified.
whatever zoning district, and not just a wholesale permitting, but
My
permitting
question
them.
is, can we see the language without actually having it put into an ordinance that starts the march? Can we?
Well, that's it. That's the puzzlement on my face. Well, how do you get two pieces of legislation? Start,
Right.
Unless you're going to say, well, we'll read them, amend one,
Yes.
eventually one will be tabled.
That's kinda
or
what I'm-
just dropped. 'Cause
Defeated
you'd have
and-
two things going forward that are the
Exact opposite.
tracking right down the same. That's why I said that would.
We don't want to have a 4-3 vote on something that's
Yeah, that's
is not congruent.
Right. I guess you could have. Well, I guess maybe we could have. I have to think about it. Maybe we could just have a legislation that prohibits it, but we would not include it in the legislation. But then maybe we can work on alternate language that you can look at to say, well, if I want to then amend off of a strict prohibition.
For instance, I would be interested where Scott would
Right.
suggest
Right.
to permit it.
We can have suggested language without coming up with an
Yeah,
ordinance
exactly.
and reading it. You can send us a proposed document that says this is what a prohibition ordinance would look like. This is what a limiting to either number or space would look like, and have some spaces. There's not going to be too many places we're going to be able to put a 25,000 square foot facility. That limits itself. So we can see draft ordinances they're just circulated that we can look at, and we can decide if we want to put one out there on the agenda And because until it comes on the agenda, it's just
Right, but you won't be able to decide if it's going to go on the agenda then until you're at the next meeting, which means it will go to the next meeting. Because you're not going to make that decision by email while
But
we're
again,
running through
but
drafts.
again, Brian,
No, I didn't
we talked about
say
waive,
that, I
we
know,
can
but-
potentially waive readings if we needed to.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I look at it as, I'd rather do the homework and then waive a reading after we've fully vetted the ordinance, or vetted the language, than have the language out there and not have our homework done when we write the language. I guess that's where I'm at.
And we can discuss I think we could discuss at a meeting the competing versions.
That's right.
Quite frankly, yes.
Okay. All right, well, okay, we can, that would work. I just was struggling with how do you get two pieces of legislation on the agenda that are doing opposite things? You're saying just don't put them on the agenda.
I don't think we put them on the agenda, and I think that if they're out there, and the knock on waiving the 3 readings is that we put something on the agenda on March the 6th, and then we waive it, and it gets 1 reading, and we don't get public input. This way, we'll have this discussion. We can have our own public comment session, and then we can waive, if we need to, a reading. Put it on the agenda, waive readings, and pass it. If that's what we come to. So we do it
You wouldn't be
reverse.
amending it, right? You'll be doing the homework to get the language
Right.
you want.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
We do
All right,
backwards.
Then you wouldn't be stuck with a fourth potential.
Yeah. We do it in reverse, the way we usually do it.
Yeah, that'd work.
All right.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, sir.
That's very interesting.
Thanks, Brian.
Mr. King.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple items for you. In your packet was a report from the most recent Parks Board meeting that was held on February 14th. What this report is about is a recommendation that was made by the Parks Board during that meeting. There was a lot of discussion on placement of a parks levy on the November ballot for the general election of 0.75%. This report spells out, shows you what the process is, also has a proposed schedule. That schedule has about a month built into it in case language, we approve the language, it's sent to the elections board and they kick it back and we need to make changes. We'd have enough time over 2 meetings to do that. Also included, and I apologize, there's a portion of a survey that the Parks Board did. I forgot to include the individual responses on this, the comments, but this is the summary of all the answers, and it's telling. If this was held true, I believe about 73% or so of the respondents were in favor of a 0.75% park levy. There will be a representative at the March 6th meeting from the Parks Board to discuss this more in depth, but I wanted to get the information out to you so you saw what the timeline is, what the process is for placing it on the levy. The only other thing that I have is this coming Thursday and Friday, I will be at the Ohio City Management Association Winter Conference. It's in town, so I'll have my phone and be available. One of the sessions I'm interested in attending is based on a discussion we had at a couple council meetings was about drones, and there's going to be a session about regulation of drones and what to do. So that's one that really jumped out to me. And it's funny, it was pointed out to me because after that meeting, I posted on the OCMA message board to see if anybody had done any drone regulations, and I never got any responses. But the secretary from OCMA pointed out that would be one of the ones. So I'll be there, but I certainly will be available by telephone, text, or email if anything happens to come up. Happy to answer any questions about the parks information or anything upcoming on the agenda.
Anything? Very good. Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you. On the agenda today for first reading is supplemental appropriation. This is housekeeping. We have several items. We didn't want to muddy up the River Forest lift station supplemental. So to get that off the plate, this one will go through all 3 readings. In my report, I detailed what currently they're for. Biggest item is the parks, making sure that they have the appropriations for their operating expenditures. Please note they're covered by fee revenue generated by registration fees and the like, so it's just appropriating those monies. We met last week, the directors, other directors, myself and BJ met with our IT consultants in detail to discuss business resumption, disaster planning, disaster recovery planning. We're going to start taking those steps, taking more detailed documents of what the key processes are. They recommended taking an approach of what can't you live without for a day, a week, a month, or whatever, and kind of tackling the processes by those,
So obviously the things you need in a day, you have to figure out, how do you address those? So those would be the first things we focus on. But each of the directors is gonna come back, we're gonna get together and kind of go over those, so at least we're starting down that path of working through that. It's one of those things that everybody needs to do, but with all the work everybody has to do, it's just one of those topics that's easy to get pushed aside because it doesn't have a time sensitivity, but the Licking County sure does ring that bell and remind you that, yeah, we need to get that done. I don't think there's anything else. In my report, I also mentioned the centralized collection that's being proposed for net profits tax. It's currently proposed in the budget. We are working with Rita, the OML, and others to find out more about what the actual plans are with that. We're very, very concerned about that. Anytime the state wants to take over any part of local income tax collection, it's a concern. Tim reached out to me, and I've reached out to see if we can come up with some sort of language for a resolution type of a thing. So I'll stay tuned. I'll be getting that as soon as I find some language that others are proposing. And that's all I have.
Jamie, I had a couple questions, and I may have asked this to BJ also. In your report last week, or last meeting, you talked about renewing the insurance, the liability insurance.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure that you guys had also included in having a rec program now. In the past, we had, I think, deleted that coverage when the rec program wasn't in existence. Are we sure that that's covered within this liability?
That's a good question. I'll have to look into that.
Okay.
Make sure that we are covered.
Okay, and then a second question. The report from Mr. Yost, the auditor, it says the 2015 report. Could you, in reading this, I can't really make heads or tails out of it without having our information from 2015. Could you give us some kind of supplemental information from 2015?
Sure. I thought when I published our report from 2015. But
okay, I'll look at it again.
Check it.
I'll look at it
I'll be
again.
happy to get rid of the information, but I thought I had pulled our report as well as the global report.
Okay, I'll look at it again, just make sure. Okay, thanks.
Anything else for Jamie? Nate?
I don't have anything other than I wouldn't mind volunteering and helping out with the shooting range. I won't speak
Come
for my
on down.
staff, but if I could be an assistance, I can
Excellent.
do anything and help out that way. Just let me know the schedule.
Get you the dates. Obviously, we're hopeful for good weather. It would have been nice to have spring break this week, but that didn't happen.
Let me know. I'd be more than happy to help out if we can lend some equipment from our end. So
fantastic.
I don't have anything new unless you folks have any questions of me.
Anything for Nate? Okay, Alan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple updates. From the resolutions, the last council meeting, we did purchase a used coal planer. We had asked for $15,000, but we only used $4,000 to get the used one and got them to throw in some extra teeth and replace some hoses, so I think we got a pretty good deal there. The other one is the large equipment trailer. We'd originally asked for $25,000. That was for a name brand trailer. We found one that we believe will suit our needs and purchased it for $15,000. We had some savings there also. I guess the caveat with that savings is we've got a sign truck bed that'll be coming up soon. We think that's going to be a little bit more than we originally budgeted, but still should see some savings in that budget item. And then a couple of resolutions on the agenda for tonight's meeting. One is for the engineering for the Oak Meadow Drive improvements. That is for Jobs Henderson to do the design work on that. They had done the preliminary work on that, helped us identify their alternatives, and I recommend moving forward with that. The second one is the detention pond inventory and evaluation. That was identified in the budget from last year. This is for the first $10,000 of that originally approved $25,000. This is to have Jobs and Henderson go through and do the actual inventory evaluation, figure out which ponds belong to who, and then also recommend some maintenance items and help me figure out what we can do as far as enforcement on HOA-owned ponds. The other $15,000, remaining $15,000, I anticipate putting into improvements this year as far as maintenance for ones that are city-owned. That's all I have specifically. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes, sir.
On, Alan, congratulations on the trailer. Did you get the electric brakes that you wanted?
I believe, yeah.
Oh, good.
And it also has hydraulic.
Glad to hear
lift
that.
for
And the lift on the back. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is excellent. And same with the cold planer. I'm looking forward to using that out at the parks. The other one that I wanted to talk about was the cataloging of the storm basins. Can you give us a little bit more detail of the scope on that? I'm having a hard time understanding exactly why we need Jobs Henderson to do this function for us. I think our administrative team here is very qualified, including Scott and yourself and BJ and Nate, to understand what the maintenance might entail.
Okay, I guess I'd never envisioned planning and zoning or utilities.
Well, Scott, being your discussions about who owns and who's the HOA people, I think Scott's got some knowledge of that. Obviously, utility-wise, he's dealing with all kinds of materials and different problems. We're talking about stormwater. We're talking about pipes and storm pipes and such. So anyhow, the people that we have on staff are very qualified to look at this, I'm sure, and yourself for that matter.
And I hadn't envisioned using, like I said, planning and zoning or utilities as a part of this, and I have the public service department. I did not intend or anticipate using them to catalog and inventory these. That's kind of out of the scope of what they typically do, I guess. So I envisioned as me doing it with all the other projects we've got going on. It would be a long time before I got to that. We specifically, make sure I'm saying this, I believe that's the most calls that I've received last year. I have a public service action list, as I call it. I catalog whoever calls and what it's about and making sure we're following up on that. And retention detention ponds is one of the highest call volumes that I've received, whether it be for flooding, lack of maintenance, mosquitoes. So I've received several calls on that, and this was my action to do something about that. So currently there's some number of them throughout the city. I don't know what that number is. I don't know where they all are. So I need to catalog them, finding out who owns them. Some of them are platted to us, some of them are not. So determining that, and then could I make recommendations on maintenance? Probably. I've not done too much of that myself in the past, but I'm sure I could research it and figure it out. Although, like I said, it would take me time that I don't really currently have to accomplish this.
Well, I guess what you brought up would be my exact example. With Scott knowing where the having plats, access to the plats, which they've spent a good amount of time categorizing those plats and understanding where these detention ponds or these platted properties may be, whether they're in reserves or whether they're platted directly to the city. I think that would answer your questions on whether they're HOAs or they're city maintained.
There's definitely some research there.
Jason and others on your staff or that work with you in the Public Works Department, they deal with the maintenance every day, all day, I'm sure. Now, whether there are 10 ponds or there's 30 ponds, I don't know that an outside engineering firm is needed, this is not a specialty issue where an outside engineering firm would need to come in. Yourself as an engineer and these other people that can provide support could do this and save that $10,000. That's where I'm at with it.
Mr. King?
I understand what you're saying. I think part of this is just trying to get this done as soon as possible. This has been identified on our annual NPDES that we need to come up with maintenance programs and do the inspections. We're responsible for doing it. And this is the approach to trying to get it done as soon as possible, because certainly, we talked today about the plans that Scott has to do. Alan's certainly going to be managing several capital improvement projects this year. So it would be, if we did at staff level, it's certainly going to become a second or third tier project.
Well, but we just heard Alan say that the most calls he gets are regarding this. So to me, that would put this as a priority, would it not?
He, over managing the CIP projects and what he's going to be busy with this year, no.
I've said my piece, so I'm good.
Yes, sir.
I must admit, I actually saw the exact same thing and had the exact same question. I guess I got a follow-up question, and I called Mr. King about this morning, and we had a little bit of a discussion about it. But I certainly, it caught my eye as well, for the same reasons. I guess my follow-up question would be, this is for 10. Are you expecting another 15 based on what you wrote in the budget?
Yeah.
Insofar as
I don't know. I mean, are we?
Yeah, that's-
I mean, in my mind, I kind of say, all right, look, I understand how busy everybody is. You're going to let a services contract for this because it's something we've identified. I guess my first question would be is, do our MPDES permits carry some type of either milestone or penalty? You know,
Yeah, I didn't hear what you said. What's that?
do our MPDES permits carry some type of milestone or penalty? Did we tell the EPA, well, we're going to do this in 2017?
No, there wouldn't
So,
be. It's a it's one of those things that we're required to do by the EPA. We did a couple years ago, if you remember, when we straightened out the NPDES stuff, it was something they mentioned in their audit letter that we didn't have this in place.
Okay. And then the follow-up to that is, you talked about the budget, and there's been some discussion back and forth. I understand that just because we hold a responsibility to review the budget, but the second part to that is just where we are right now. I do know that it was in the budget. I almost never question it. Second part, I'm going a long way around the mountain, but let me get to the budgeted amount was $25,000. This is to let a personal. Do you call it a personal services contract for 10? So do you think the 10's going to do it? Because I can see in my mind splitting the baby and saying, if you pardon the phrase, hey, I don't think 25,000 is a good expenditure of funds. By the same token, if it's not going to get done and you anticipated it and you put it in the budget for that reason, at $10,000, do you think that's going to meet your requirement?
So in the 5-year CIP, I've identified $25,000 per year for the next 5 years. Like I said, the $10,000 is to get this initial inventory, cataloging, maintenance recommendations. At least, I'm anticipating at least 50 to 75% done, and then taking the other $15,000 this year and putting it into actual improvements. Next year, I would anticipate having potentially some additional, because I think for that 10,000 we're going to identify our worst problems and be able to take that 15 and start hitting maybe one or two of those. I think that's about as far as that's going to get us, I'm guessing. And then maybe another 5,000 next year in these same kind of services, and then the other 20,000 to hit that next tier or next two projects 3 and 4 on that maintenance list.
And then I guess as a follow-up question, I might ask you, and I really, this is not a gotcha question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, is it possible that what Andy has described and utilizing Mr. Fulton, if he has the time, and Mr. Corey, if he has the time, can you do that initial identification without the $10,000? And I'm sure the answer is yes if I do nothing else, right? I'm just trying to see if there's a middle point.
Can it be done? Yes, absolutely. The reason I went this route and proposed this route is kind of like BJ mentioned. If you look through my report, there's a lot of things going on, and even though it is one of my top resident calls, it's not top priority, especially with all the development we have going on and engineering reviews and making sure that we're getting the right things in there and managing construction inspection and that kind of thing. It does drop down on my list, and I fear that if we don't do it this way, I'm going to have a hard time getting to it this year.
That answers the question for me.
Alan, do you feel like this is a engineer has to do this, or do you think that potentially somebody within the Public Works or the Public Service Department could do it?
I don't know.
I mean, categorizing and locating them and knowing which one owns what. Do you think that has to be done by an engineer?
Does it have to be done by an engineer? No.
No. And we don't have any snow, and we don't have any. We do have some people that possibly could be available to do this. I mean, I'm not trying to micromanage, Alan. I'm just $10,000 is $10,000. If we don't have to spend it, I don't want to spend it.
I mean, I could have those guys out doing storm sewer repairs and roadway repairs, which they're familiar with.
I understand.
Or try and pull them off to set up a spreadsheet and do research, which they're not familiar with.
Yeah, they're going to be totally out of their element with that.
Really.
Mr. Mayor?
Pretty qualified people.
Yes, just hang on to that thought for just one second. I believe we have a councilman who needs to
Mr. Mayor,
excuse himself.
I'd like to excuse myself to go back to work. If,
Right.
Sorry to have to cut it short, but
You're excused.
barn burner tonight. So
You're excused.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Mr. Barstow.
Oh, sure. Okay. Well, I'll just go directly. So Nate and Scott, so straight up, can you help Alan do this project? And if you can't, just say, I can't do it. If you can, then say I can. But be careful if you say I can.
Could I add a point before you answer? Because could also Zach with the GIS and stuff, could that help in this program?
There's potential, yes, there's potential for all this. It's just the timeliness given the other projects we're working on.
Okay. I guess help me out here. Have we identified all the retention ponds that are problems?
No, we don't know what's ours. We don't know what all's out there. We don't know what's not ours. That's part of the problem.
So we have a retention pond in my neighborhood. Okay, we own it. It's well maintained. We don't have any problems with it. The HOA puts a lot of money into keeping it up and et cetera. So in fact, we have two. Anyway, so if it belongs to an HOA, it's not necessarily our responsibility to go out and fix their broken tile and funky storm drains and stuff like
I
that.
concur with that, but it is, I believe at least, and that's part of the process of this, what I've proposed in here, is to determine what we can and need to do to enforce HOAs to maintain them, because there's several that are not being maintained. And I agree, they're not ours to maintain, but somebody needs to police that, and I don't think the EPA is. So basically, it's coming to us, whether it's their responsibility or not. So I need to know what I can do to say you need to do something about this.
Okay, so planning and zoning, what enforcement capabilities do we have if Mr. Haynes finds out that, the Stinky Oaks HOA isn't maintaining their storm sewers and their retention pond, and what are we going to do to them? What can we do?
I don't know that there's anything in the code that directly addresses lack of maintenance for retention pond.
Neighborhood storm sewers, things like that.
So I'm sure throughout the code, we could find something that could address it peripherally, but nothing that's directly saying, retention pond, if you're not doing these items, this is the consequence, that we could send a violation letter and clearly turn it over. We could find things that could potentially address some of the offshoot issues, but nothing directly. Then the other issue would be, do we want to go in heavy-handed with violation letter and say, you got 10 days to fix this or else you're coming to court? So I think there's some element to that where we could determine the issues and then work with the HOAs to address it, because a lot of times as we get these subdivisions, the developer turns it over to the HOA, but there's no maintenance plan in place. They've never told, a lot of times they've never told the HOA, that's your responsibility to maintain the pond. And then, the folks in the subdivision, I don't, what do I need to do? If my refrigerator's broken, I know who to call. My retention pond's broken, I don't think they know who to call. So I think having the process set up initially, we could maintain it from there. Once we know everything that's out there, the issues and things involved in that, I think that'd be beneficial. I think we could do it ourselves, but then that takes us off other projects, and those projects are delayed.
Yeah, I guess we don't even know how many. It sounds like we don't even.
Yeah.
We don't even know where.
They've never been maintained.
We don't even know. Even if we found an HOA, or we found a retention pond that belonged to an HOA, there's anything we can do about it. It sounds like it.
Part of what I've written into the legislative report is into the resolution is figure out what protocol there is. Maybe that's looking to other communities to see what they have on their books and giving some kind of recommendation on how that would be set up. Or maybe it's possible that the EPA has something that we can piggyback off of. That's part of this process.
Okay, thanks, guys. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else for Alan?
Scott.
Thank you, sir. Just still plugging away on updating the comprehensive plan, the subdivision regulations, digitizing our zoning permits, and doing the office organization. Be happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Scott? Very good. Chief?
Yeah, we now have 2 officers that have their FFA drone pilot license, and we are working on our policies and procedures to get that project up and running if we choose to do so down the road. There isn't any department so far that has regulations, so Detective Ramsey is actually working with a couple other agencies that are kind of setting the whole thing up through City Patrol, so we're working that route. And with that, we will actually maybe be able to suggest some things that we would like to see if the council chooses to research and things. And then I'm happy to say we got our new speed trailer up and running today, collecting data, and it will be ready for use probably in the next couple of days. And we'll see it out. And that's it.
Anything for the chief? Yes, ma'am.
Speaking of speed trailer, and Councilman Lee had to leave, so I'll kind of do this for him as well. I know he's received resident complaints about speeding on Havens Corners. I actually had a couple from Dixon, and then, we regularly get them at the high school with the students back and forth. So I actually saw an officer on Havens Corners just the other day, so getting somebody. So
Take it there today.
awesome. So just if we could maybe get a speed trailer, just the presence of that out there with the kids. It's warm. They haven't had a snow day, and they're all pent up, so they're all acting kind of crazy. And then, I go to school and threaten that I'll tell on them after I followed them. So, but that would be awesome.
It's on the list.
Thank you.
I think that's on the top of the list, as soon as that thing's running, right? Okay. Anything else for Bruce? Committee chair reports. Mr. Barstow.
Well, we had an agriculture committee meeting this evening, and once again, Mr. Lee has abandoned me. We had 3 ag district approvals we'll be bringing up later for approval by council.
Very good. Mrs. Carter?
We had a development committee meeting. Based on the amount of time we had and the amount of things we had to go over, it was very high level. We didn't get in depth on really any of the topics, so we are planning a meeting here in the very near future that's going to last a little bit longer, so when we have more details on different projects or whatnot, we'll bring them to council at that time.
Very good. Mr. Hicken?
There was a utility committee meeting scheduled for March 13th, and we are shooting for 4:30.
Correct.
Any other, I'm sorry. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Mr. Walter?
We had a street committee meeting this evening. It was also a very quick meeting, one that we're going to try to do a little bit longer meeting the next time. But we did go through several items. Alan had prepared many charts for us, including a Jobs and Henderson estimate for the ramp, the preliminary estimate for the ramp. It looks, and per Alan's report, it looks like everything is within budget, and there were some findings of some roads that had some very thin road composites, which basically means 3 inches of asphalt on gravel, which is hard. 2 of them actually that were that way. So they've changed their way. They've changed their thoughts on that, which I think is correct, and going with an overlay versus a
microservice.
Yeah, microservice. So with that, we also had a quick CIP update on 3 projects. One of them being the Columbia Road Bridge. which is expected to be out of service for 2 to 3 months. We're expecting it to be out of service for at least 2 to 3 months. May to July timeframe, roughly.
Starting in July.
Starting in July, I'm sorry, July starting. We have the Columbia Road culvert, which July 1st, my notes say July 1st funds were released, but again, this was a very fast meeting. So we're thinking it's 30 to 45 days to complete that project. And then the Mill Street culvert, which Alan is going to make sure is scheduled to coincide to not have more than 2 of these projects happening at any one time, because they are essentially in the same region, and I'll define that region as Columbia and Mill Street. And that's a 2-week duration. And with that, I'll be making a motion for, we'll make a recommendation, I guess, for council, a motion to council to accept the preliminary draft ramp assessment that has been put together, so that Alan can go forward with putting together the bid documents. And I don't know if this information is going to be disseminated to the rest of council.
It will be.
Okay.
Yeah, it was shared just with the street committee for discussion tonight, but it will be sent to the rest of the council.
It's well done. It's excellent. It shows you all the different areas. It goes through a great description of what is happening in each one of these. So I think that's a great item. Again, we didn't have much time. I know Mr. Hicken has some issues with some crosswalks and some other things that need to be brought up to the via either the street committee or council in general. We have some, we'll have a follow-up meeting once Alan has these ramps in place and ready to go. We'll have a follow-up meeting to essentially make a recommendation. I guess we have to make a recommendation to council at that point to move forward with the bidding.
It sounds like I just heard you mention, and it hadn't occurred to me before, the Columbia Road Bridge will probably be closed even when school starts, correct?
July, August, and September.
September, okay.
Very likely.
Okay. Any other committee chair reports? All righty. New business, ordinance 2017-4276 for first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hicken. Kathy, when you're ready, first reading.
Ordinance 2017-4276, this is the first reading, an ordinance to rezone properties located at 72 North Hazelton Etna Road, parcel number 064-309-102-00.000 and 144 East Broad Street, parcel number 309-030-00.000 from the medium-density residential R20 zoning classification to the Professional Research Office Pro zoning classification.
Any discussion on first reading? Ordinance 2017-4281 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved
Second.
by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Hicken. Kathy, when you're ready.
Ordinance 2017-4281, this is the first reading, an ordinance to make supplemental appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2017.
Any discussion? Resolutions. Resolution 2017-018, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to execute a contract with Jobs Henderson and Associates for engineering design services for the Oak Meadow Drive improvement project and to advertise, receive, and review bids for construction of the same.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Carter.
Discussion.
Discussion. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to point out, we're again doing a no bid. Utility, Alan's going to think I'm beating up on him, but I'm not. This is again a no bid engineering contract. A couple meetings ago, we awarded $85,000 in no bid contracts to Jobs Henderson. We're now ordering. We're going ahead, and I think this one's $48,000 contract to Jobs Henderson. This is not something that I would suggest that we continue to do. There are other engineering firms out there. BJ and I had a discussion about this. There's pluses and minuses to a no bid. or an award without bid. It's not required to go out for a bid, but at the same time, we've had situations where we have gone to a single engineering firm repeatedly, and each time we've had very bad results. I'm not saying that will happen in this situation. I think with the inspection agency helping us keep that in line or in tow, we can improve that. But at the same time, I just want to put out there that, when we go through this, if all the bids are awarded to Jobs and Henderson, and this is going to go to $150,000 worth of bids that are not contracts that have not been bid out. So I just want to mention that I don't have any problem with Jobs Henderson. I'm just saying that we're going down that path that we've been down before.
Point taken.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Kathy, when you're ready.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee, Hicken,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
yes,
Resolution passes. Resolution 2017-019, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to execute a contract with Jobs Henderson and Associates for engineering design services for the retention, detention, pond inventory, and evaluation project.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow and seconded by Mr. Hicken. Discussion and roll.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walter,
No.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
yes,
Barstow,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2017-020, a resolution authorizing a partnership agreement between Licking County and the City of Pataskala in regard to Program Year 2017 Community Housing Impact and Preservation, better known as CHIP funds, from the Ohio Development Services Agency, Office of Community Development, ODSA, OCD, and directing the city administrator to execute said partnership agreement.
so moved,
Moved by Mrs. Carter.
second,
Seconded by Mrs. Hayes. Discussion and roll.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
yes,
Barstow,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2017-021, a resolution adopting Licking County's programmatic agreement with the State of Ohio Historic Preservation Office and the Licking County Community Development Advisory Commission, CDAC, CHIP manual for eligible housing activities for the partnership between Licking County, who is the applicant grantee, and the City of Pataskala, the partner, funded in whole or in part with Program Year 2017 Community Housing Impact and Preservation, CHIP funds, from the Ohio Development Services Agency, Office of Community Development, ODSA, OCD.
so moved,
Moved by Mrs. Carter.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hicken. Discussion and roll.
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
yes,
Barstow,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Resolution passes. On the motions, motion to amend Council Rules of Order, Section 8, to read as follows. Order of business. The mayor shall take the chair at the hour appointed for the meeting of council and shall call the meeting to order and direct the clerk to call roll. If a quorum is present, the meeting shall continue. Citizens' comments at special meetings are permitted and limited to agenda items. The order of any regular or alternate meeting shall be as follows. Number 1, call to order. 2, Pledge of Allegiance. 3, roll call. 4, citizens' comments. 5, executive session if requested. 6, introduction, discussion, and approval of consent agenda matters. 7, reports and committee chair reports. Number 8, unfinished business. 9, new business. 10, additional citizens' comments. 11, executive session if requested. 12, committee meetings, announcements, scheduling issues, and general comments. And 13, adjournment.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hicken. Discussion and roll.
Carter,
yes,
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
yes,
Barstow,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. Any other motions?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
The Agricultural Committee met this evening and recommended to council to approve the following agricultural protection district reports. Number one is for the owner is Ronald Thomas, and his address is 1291 Poppy Hills Drive, Black Lick, Ohio. The parcel number is in the report. I'm not going to read that into the record. We'd make a motion to council to approve that.
I'm going to do one at a time. Is that
Let's
the
do
best
one at
way
a
to
time,
do it?
yeah.
Okay, very good. Have a motion to approve the Ron Thomas agricultural application.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion and roll.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Pickens,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Application passes.
Yeah,
Mr. Barstow.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The second Agricultural Protection District report is the owner of PKL Property Management LLC. Their address is 1470 Sedgefield Drive, New Albany, Ohio, 43054. I move that we approve this report.
Got a motion? Need a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Walther. Discussion and roll.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Pickens,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Barstow.
Thank you. This is the Agricultural Protection District report for Joseph and Roseanne Wojciech Family Trust. That's their address is 13100 Havens Corner Road, here in Pataskala. Move that council approve that report.
Got a motion by Mr. Barstow.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion and roll.
Barstow,
Yes.
Pickens,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Okay, that passes also. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You see your permit there. If there's no questions on that, that'll just go the way it usually goes. Any discussion on that?
I'm sorry.
On the permit
I had a motion.
liquor license? Oh, you have a
I
motion.
had a
I'm sorry.
motion.
Go ahead.
I didn't know we got past that. I'd like to make a motion that council approve the preliminary draft report, ramp assessment that was put together by Alan and provided to the street committee.
I have a motion by Mr. Walther, seconded by Mr. Barstow. Discussion and roll.
Pickens,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Sorry, Andy, I didn't mean to lose you there. Any questions on D, the permit for Pataskala Meats liquor? Seeing none. Additional citizens' comments? Anybody wish to speak? They're still awake. All right, very good. We'll go roundy round. We'll start with Mrs. Carter.
I want to thank Mr. Lipsy for coming in and talking about the BOLI program, and especially how passionate he is about Licking County and bringing back to his home. It's something that I've been really involved with for years with the schools, so I admire his dedication to that. And I always love seeing a Heights kid in front of council with something cool. And so Mr. Hampshire with his Eagle Scout project, their dad is literally a rocket scientist. Like, that's what he does for a living. So they got a group of smart kids over there.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to say quickly about the police station. You know, that's been a long time coming, and we've had a lot of discussion, and I'm really excited. It was kind of like a bride with cold feet at the, worried about the money at the end. But when you look at the overall, and especially on the west side of town in my ward, the investment is necessary for how we're growing and what's going to happen in the future. So I'm excited to see that go. That's all I have.
Well, just one quick note. We had another meeting this, was it Tuesday or last Tuesday? Horn and King came out. We've been meeting on a regular basis, I think every 2 weeks. We did shave off another, Bruce and Mike Bowles had come up with an island that did not need to be built, furniture-type island inside the building, so we saved $2,000 there. And then I had asked the two fire chiefs, Mr. Majors and Mr. Trenish, if they would waive the fees for permits and inspections that have to be done during those things. When something's being built, they have to be physically on the premises to make sure that those water lines are being buried and all that kind of stuff. They waived those fees, and they gave me an estimate of possibly anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000. So, we've been chipping away at this and trying to do what we need to do. In fact, they went so far as to say that, there's going to be a lockbox on the front of the building so that the fire department can get in that lockbox and get the keys to whatever they need to get. They're actually donating a lock box.
It's called a Knox box.
I'm sorry, it is a Knox box. Where am I thinking? Okay, sorry, Knox box.
Knox box.
They are donating a Knox box lock valued at $70. So we have been trying to do this the right way. So anyway, I throw that in there. Mr. Barstow.
Nothing.
Mr. Hicken.
Congratulations to the people that were placed on the different committees, and a special thanks to everybody who applied. Even if they did not make it, it's those people that care enough to come in and throw their names in the ring. So I'm very grateful to every citizen who comes and says that they're interested. And I guess I would echo the comments about the police department. There is no doubt there's a little pucker factor, and I think you saw that from all of us. But I'm excited that I'll wait and see the next phase, which of course is the bids, right? See how they come in. So that's it.
And we've been working on this when we first started the footprint. We've been looking at this building from day one on how we could make sure that it was economically built and very efficient. And that started way back when we had Mike and Bruce and Horn and King. We had a team of officers that gave their input, came to Buildings and Grounds and took that as far as we could go. And then Buildings and Grounds turned it over to us to start working with Horn and King on the architectural part of it. It's been a long road, and I think you'll all be happy in the end. Mrs. Hayes.
I have nothing. Thank you.
Mr. Walther.
I've got a couple things. I want to echo what Mr. Barstow had said during the meeting. I'm going to put a different spin on the police station. A $400,000 a year payment is 3/5 of our road ramp project. That's a substantial amount of money that could be utilized for roads or for anything else for that matter. I know that the administration and everybody that's on the committee, the Buildings and Grounds, is working hard to keep the number down. I think there's some other things that I think are still available to utilize to do that. With that being said, I know that a community that is growing such as ours needs to have a adequate police station, so I'm looking forward to seeing one that is economic. I'm looking forward to setting an example of one that is economically built and is appropriate for a growing community. Those are hard to come by. I've seen some that have not been economically built. So let's make sure we're watching the pennies. I can't say that enough. Second thing I wanted to say was the survey that was done by BJ's group, on what's that? What's the
Survey Monkey.
Survey Monkey. I applaud the city for not spending money to do a survey, to spending very little money to do a survey. I know the school districts and everybody have spent some big dollars to do surveys. We did not, and we came up with a very good survey. I hope that everybody reads the comments. They're telling of where we've come in 10 years from a recreation and parks that, quite frankly, I don't think very many people cared about to where we are now, and that the administration cares, and that different parts of the administration, including the service department, all different parts of the community and the city are caring about the parks. It's a big deal. So I'm looking forward to more discussion about the potential park levy, because we could do so much more. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Powell.
I have nothing.
Very good. Entertain a motion to adjourn unless there's anything else.
Second.
Mr. Barstow first, and Mrs. Carter second. Discussion and roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Please say yes.
Yes.
Yeah, is that so?
Yes.
You got a headache too, Dan?
Yeah, the light was really bright.
Meeting adjourned.
You feel that pulse?
Hey, Tim. Utility committee meeting is the same day that we scheduled the Worcester Development Committee.
Yes.
From 3 to 4:30. You guys are starting at 4.
We're starting at 4:30.
Oh, you're starting at 4:30? Cool.
Pretty much you signing your life.
Chairs